to order the March 1st, 2022 meeting of the North Andover Planning Board. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the North Andover Planning Board will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Specific information, the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, in-person attendance of members of the public and board members will be permitted. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting live may do so on their television by tuning into Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26 or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceeding as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public hearings but not attend the meeting in person, please email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to Jean Enright at JENRIGHT@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be read during the proceeding and responded to accordingly. Okay, so we're going to jump right into continued public hearings. Annual town meeting zoning bylaw amendment, Article 19. Again, pursuant, actually, no, I'm sorry, let's call roll first, yeah.
Here. Kelly Cormier.
Here.
Sean Kevlahan.
Here.
Eitan Goldberg.
Here.
Peter Boynton.
Here.
And Eitan, do you want to introduce Sean?
Yep, and John Simons is not here for the record.
I'm sorry, John Simons, who is not present.
Okay, yes, Sean Kevlahan is our newest member. He is an associate member, and he was appointed yesterday and sworn in and is now our associate member. So he will participate in what an associate member is someone who participates in our discussions, asks questions, generally not a voting member except in certain situations when we have special permits and we do not have 5 full members present. So welcome, Sean. Thank you. We look forward to having you. All right, I'll reread the notice for our public hearings. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, these public hearings of the North Andover Planning Board will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Specific information, the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For these public hearings, in-person attendance of members of the public and board members will be permitted. Members of the public who wish to watch the public hearings may do so on their televisions by tuning into Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26, or by going online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we aren't able to do so, despite best efforts, we'll post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceeding as soon as possible after the public hearings. If the public would like to participate in the public hearing but not attend the meeting, you can email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to Jean Enright at JENRIGHT@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be read during the proceeding and responded to accordingly. All right, we're going to start with Article 10, amend the zoning bylaw to establish an inclusionary housing requirement bylaw, and thereby amend Article 8, supplementary regulations, by adding Part 13, inclusionary housing requirements. All right, Jean, can you please tell us where we're at, what we're looking at, and what we need to do for today's hearing?
Okay, so as you know, the draft bylaw has been presented for some time. You've had representatives from Mass Housing Partnership as well as Department of Housing and Community Development present. You've had members of the Affordable Housing Trust present. And speak in support of the article. The only red line edit, and it's as a result of when I presented to the Affordable Housing Trust, they had questions related to the calculation for fees in lieu. So subsequent to that meeting, I've met with a couple members of the Affordable Housing Trust, and we have proposed alternative language. So this is the only red line edit in the draft that you have been reviewing for several months. And essentially, it calculates the fee as the difference between the full fair value, market value of a property compared to the affordable value of the property. So the payment in lieu would be the difference of those two numbers. I will add that I did have a public comment related to this red line edit. And so when it says equal to the difference between the full and fair cash market value, it was questioned, what does cash market value mean? And that's just language that I believe has been taken from the Department of Revenue statute. They refer to it with that same language. The Arlington bylaw uses the same language. I'm indifferent. I think the cash can be removed, and it has the exact same meaning. So if it's confusing to use the word cash, I have no objection to removing that word.
Okay, I mean, cash market value versus market value, does that indicate the value of something if you're buying in cash rather than using a mortgage?
Right, and I think it could be interpreted that way.
So I don't think we need to be that granular and limiting.
And I would say the intent of revisiting the calculation was to give the developer some more predictability or certainty in terms of their pro forma and their application. And I think this does that.
Okay, so let's just make it market value. Okay. All right. And so let's assume that that's our only change that, if that's the only change that we want, what's the next steps for this bylaw?
So I'm hopeful tonight that as you review each of these 3 warrant articles and review the red line edits, that we come to some consensus to either accept them or modify them, and then submit the warrant articles that are all being sponsored by the planning board, all 3 of them, to the town manager's office for inclusion in the warrant.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you're making a recommendation this evening. It's just simply
we need to
inclusion in the
finalize
warrant.
what the language is to go on the warrant, and after our public hearings are finalized, we'll make our planning board recommendation. Yeah. Okay. All right, so does anybody have any suggested changes that they want to make to the inclusionary zoning bylaw? If not, then it would appear as amended and redlined in the warrant article. And again, we'll vote on a recommendation once we finish our public hearings.
And just to clarify that a little bit, the schedule to vote on recommendations is March 15th, but the public hearing will remain open all the way up until a half hour before town meeting. And so if there's further red line edits, they can be accounted for.
Okay, that's fair enough. But we intend to vote on a planning board recommendation at the next meeting, then it goes to the select board for their recommendations, finance committee if appropriate. I assume this one would go to I would assume.
Not positive on that.
I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like it has a financial impact theoretically, but it goes to the appropriate boards to make recommendations, then ultimately to town meeting for a vote.
And the objective is to make sure those recommendations are all printed in the warrant in addition to the planning board report. So the recommendation can be seen in the warrant.
Okay. Anyone with any changes? Hearing none, then we will move forward, Jean, with the inclusionary housing as amended, take out the word cash, and as redlined in our packet.
Yep, so I'll accept the red lines and submit it clean. Yep.
Okay. Now we will do Article 10, amend the zoning bylaw to establish Article 19, mixed-use overlay district, and amend the zoning map of the town of North Andover. We'll do those 2 together. So we'll continue public hearing. So the order I'd like to do, then these are the Trinity Royal Crest articles. So the order we're going to do is we'll have a short presentation again from Trinity as to the project. I'll then turn to Jean to do some housekeeping with some items that we had discussed at the last meeting, questions, comments that we had that had kind of come up and that we have some more data on. Then I think we'll go back to Trinity. There were some questions that had been asked, so if we can get some of the answers to those questions that had been previously asked at the last meeting. We'll then read into the record any comments that have come in. We'll then take public comments, and then we'll go to the board for comments, and then discussion of the bylaw, similar to what we just did with the inclusionary zoning bylaw. So that's the general idea for the timeline.
Is the program summary, is that part of tonight's meeting package? We've been carrying that for each meeting, and I'm just curious if that's in the package.
No, the presentation given for the reduction in January, that is not carried, but the master development plan that's proposed in the bylaw is here.
Okay.
If at some point we want to go back to it, I'm sure we can find it and pull it up.
If you want to pull it up, I can add it to the meeting packet.
Can you?
Yeah,
Okay, so at the point, if you want to reference it or talk about it, Peter, we'll just take time to pull it up.
Great, thank you.
and
Okay,
then- yeah, it retroactively gets added to the meeting minutes as a reference document at the meeting, that's all. Okay,
Is there a chance you could email that? Do you have it handy?
I do. You
Thanks.
want me to email it to you?
If you can.
Okay, when I do that, I'll add it to the packet as well.
Super, thank you.
okay, so why don't we hear from Trinity? Good.
Gee, I just want to make sure that it's this one that we're sharing.
What's that date?
It's from the technical presentation.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, on behalf of Trinity, members of the development team, and our partners at AIR and AIMCO, want to again thank you for setting aside time for us to continue to present our proposal for the Royal Crest Estates. At tonight's meeting, we're going to provide a quick overview of the plans again. While they have not changed since the last meeting, we thought sharing a few of the last meeting slides will provide some context for questions and comments that might arise tonight. A quick plan summary. Ready to go. As you know, over the holidays, responding to comments regarding the heights and setbacks shown in earlier plans, we revised the plan significantly. We lowered all five-story buildings to 4 stories. We increased the setbacks on Route 114. We reduced the size of the dorm from 1,000 beds to 824 beds, and the office building from 124,000 square feet to 108,000 square feet. More importantly, we made an effort to break down the scale of the project by creating 4 distinct districts: the Mill District, the Town Center District, the Campus District, and the Village District. And again, I'm going to go through this very quickly. The Mill District, this is meant to be very reminiscent of the High Street mills, red brick with large window openings, with masonry patterns giving it depth and texture. This slide also illustrates the revised setbacks, which are now actually further back than the setback on the neighboring commercial property at 545 Turnpike Street. The revised setbacks will also enable us to keep many of the existing mature trees, further softening the edge along 114. The Town Center District, here we have several signature buildings: the clock tower at the corner, 3 stories of residential over ground floor retail, our proposed inn, reminiscent of those found in many college towns, all of these elements reflecting traditional New England architecture, framing the town green. At the other edge of the green, we have placed the student residence facility in what we call the campus district. Here again, we're reflecting traditional New England academic architecture. We chose to set this even further back from Route 114, increasing the buffer and preserving still more trees, but also creating a space to welcome those wishing to access the 1.5 miles of walking trails that will surround the new Royal Crest. Finally, the Village District. Here we have chosen to place townhouses, more in keeping with the scale of structures in the adjoining neighborhoods. We have also consolidated more park space to be enjoyed by the residents, which we believe, like the town green, will be a significant open space amenity complementary to townhouse living. In consultation with neighbors, we've incorporated a significant green buffer zone around this district, preserving still more trees, and our proposed townhouses will actually be further set back than some of the existing Royal Crest properties. I'm now going to answer questions and offer clarifications for some of the issues that came up. And I'll try to go through this quickly, and I plan on submitting this as part of the record, so you'll have...
So could we hold off on that?
Okay, sure.
So
Okay.
if you have other parts of the presentation, I'd like to we'll do some housekeeping with items that Jean has, then we'll come back.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Fine.
And then we'll go into questions, because that'll be good to do right before we do
Okay,
questions
that's
and
fine.
comments, okay? All right, great.
All right, so one of the questions asked at the last meeting was the schedule related to the Mass DOT Route 114 improvement project. And from their project manager, I received an email that says they have a planned advertisement date of December 23rd with a construction start date spring of '24, The project likely will go 3 to 4 years in construction, so likely completion in 2017.
27?
I'm sorry, 2027.
We wish.
Yeah, back in time.
All right, so 24 to 27
Yep,
is construction?
yes.
Okay.
All right. Also included in the packet, there was some conversation related to the Dover Amendment.
Actually, and go on, can I,
ahead.
to Trinity, so 24 to 27 DOT, best case scenario for you in terms of when construction would start, assuming a
Yes.
favorable town meeting and all of that other stuff?
I have a specific answer to that and how it fits with our timing.
Okay, so we'll come back to that
Yes.
then. Okay,
Yep,
so, okay,
covered.
great,
Got it.
fantastic. Okay, Jean, back to you.
Okay, so also there was some discussion related to Dover Amendment and what would happen if this wasn't approved and Merrimack wanted to pursue dorms on this side of the road still. And it was somewhat portrayed that there's no review process for that. And I just wanted to clarify, and included in the packet is Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3, which does allow some protections for certain uses, one of which is a nonprofit educational corporation. And I just wanted to clarify that there is some review, and that review is somewhat limited compared to a special permit process. However, the general law states that such land or structures may be subject to reasonable regulations concerning the bulk and height of structures and determining yard sizes, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage requirements. And so again, our special permit for site plan review, our site plan review is by special permit, with a Dover Amendment that wouldn't be probably allowed, but there are reasonable regulations that could be applied.
And some of those things are what's covered in our site plan review special
Exactly,
permit.
yep.
Okay,
All right, and the last item that was discussed at the last meeting and not really closed out was the income levels for the affordable housing components, and this is we've referred to it as the capital A affordable. These are associated with the 40B component of this project, and so proposed are 385 40B units, of which 97 would be affordable to people who meet income requirements. And a resident was specifying state numbers. However, we're associated with the Lawrence, Mass, New Hampshire HUD Metro FMR area. And on the screen and in the packet are the median family income requirements depending on household size. And so,
and there was one other, did we get data as to, there was a comment about how many housing rental units that are available in town, that there are, I think it was kind of stated that there was a significant amount of
Yes.
rental residential units as well as retail units, and I think we tried to grab some actual data on that.
so I did get some data, but I didn't include it in the packet. I didn't know that you wanted to follow up on that. However, I contacted Princeton Properties, which is located on Osgood Street. They currently, out of their 192 units, have 3 units available and the model unit. And so out of the 192, 3 are on the market for rent, and the model unit, I'm not sure is on the market or not, but hasn't been filled. And the other complex I think was pointing to was Berry Farms, which is a 40B development. A couple years ahead of Princeton Properties, it was constructed, and their occupancy is at 98%. The owners of that property are also constructing 136 units on Sutton Street, directly behind the China Blossom, and they've indicated they've already started getting calls of interest for that, and that won't be constructed, I believe, until the fall of this year, so completed construction.
And it's my understanding that retail space is somewhere between 8 and 15% vacant, depending on, is that about right?
I don't
Depending
have
on-
that number, so
Okay.
I can't confirm that.
All right. All right. If we could find out for the retail space, because I know it was kind of stated that it was supposed to be, alleged to be significant, and I'm not sure. It would be nice to know what the trend is and kind of what those numbers are, just so we could put data to that. Okay. All right, so Jim, I'll turn back to you guys to answer questions that came up that you guys were going to come up with
Okay.
answers for.
So the first clarification we want to make is the Housing Choice Act. We wanted to mention an aspect of the Housing Choice Act that wasn't discussed at the last meeting. There's a provision in the act that requires every city and town served by the MBTA, which would include North Andover, to create an as-of-right multifamily housing zone. Failure to do this will result in that jurisdiction no longer qualifying for significant state grants such as MassWorks. These state grants, as we all know, are valuable economic development tools, and we are hopeful that DACD will affirm that the proposed zoning overlay at Royal Crest will fulfill the town's obligation under the act, and North Andover can continue to have access to these programs. Route 114 corridor improvements. There were two questions regarding the 114 corridor improvements. The first one related to traffic flow. The question was specifically asked if there were going to be additional travel lanes created, and the answer to that is yes. There will be approximately 5,400 linear feet of additional travel lanes. In addition, there will be an additional 2,900 linear feet included in the 9 additional turn lanes throughout the corridor. As we have said before, while we are indeed adding additional traffic to the system, we are confident that the MassDOT improvements will be sufficient to accommodate the new Royal Crest development as well as additional background growth projected for the town. The second question.
Yep. Sure, let me just ask one question first. What do LF and EA stand for? Just so
Linear feet.
LF, linear feet?
I traffic engineer, I'm not. Will the traffic engineer in the House please answer that?
LF is the linear feet and EA is each, so EA is the number of turns.
Each, okay.
So, my recollection of the question about Mass DOT project adding travel lanes or not, I thought the question was more focused on, are any of the travel lanes being added in front of the proposed Royal Crest development, or are the additional travel lanes being added by Mass DOT in other sections of the 114 project?
The answer to the first question is no. The answer to the second question is yes.
So there's no additional travel lanes in front of Royal Crest where we're tripling the number of cars dumping onto the road.
I would, again, I'm no traffic engineer, but I would say that those additional travel lanes do benefit the traffic coming out of Royal Crest.
No
They
doubt.
don't necessarily have to be in front.
No doubt, because if there's a restriction a mile to the right or a mile to the left,
Yep.
having extra lanes are going to help.
Yep.
I don't think we're being critical of the Mass DOT project. I just want to make sure that we have clarity
Yep.
in the answer to these questions.
Sure.
Additional travel lanes, yes, but when this Mass DOT project is done, there's going to be the same number of travel lanes on 114 in front of Royal Crest that there is today. And so what it comes down to, in terms of the immediate vicinity of Royal Crest, with the increased density, increased number of units, and increased number of cars, there's going to be better sequencing of lights, which will help, and there will be a re-engineering of the intersection, the geometry, with the Andover bypass, which will also help. But don't expect a wider 114 there. Don't expect additional lanes at that location.
Again, I'm no traffic engineer.
Well, you did a traffic study, so
Yeah.
I assume you've referred to it.
Of
So to
course.
some extent, we're going to rely on you
Yes.
to accurately reflect the study that you have given to the town.
Yep, and it's been peer-reviewed by the town.
Correct.
And
Thank you.
confirmed
So I think that's right.
the analysis.
It might have been, was there an additional signal as well? I think an additional
Yep.
signal. So the point is,
A lot of things will help. I just want to make sure that when we're saying a question was asked if there's additional travel lanes, and the answer is yes, the question that was asked is, are additional lanes going to be added at Royal Crest? And my understanding is the answer there is no.
The answer is no.
Correct,
And
thank
that-
you.
okay. Okay.
Okay,
so
move
good.
on to the timing?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the question was asked about the timing of the improvements. According to MassDOT's engineers, the corridor project will commence in 2024 and not be completed until 2027, per the memo that Gene just cited, for a construction period of 3 years. Assuming we secure town meeting approval, we hope, in a best-case scenario, to begin construction in our first phase, which will be the 40B project in the student housing, in 2023, and anticipate construction completion in 2025. We do not anticipate commencing the second phase until 2026, with a completion date of 2028. Thus, all of the road work will have been completed before we have commenced 4 of the 6 phases. Also, during the initial construction period, we'll be taking several buildings offline in order to make way for the new construction in the first phase, therefore actually reducing traffic flow for the first 24 months.
So I take it then a lot, 2 years is a long time for that first phase. I take it a lot of that is remediation and
Yes.
raising and things like that. That's got to be a significant.
24 months to demolish and put all the infrastructure in is a pretty reasonable.
Are any of the phases overlapped?
We do not anticipate that the initial phases overlapping. We want to complete one, get that occupied, and then commence with the second one after that. Oh, I should say that the next
So,
phase.
and I don't have, I know you did a phasing study. That's not a phasing program. That's not in front of me. But they're all
Right.
separate. They're not overlapped. Is that
Right.
Okay.
So, again, I think we're comfortable. We often do large-scale projects, and we need to coordinate that with local DPWs, because the sidewalks have to be right, and the elevations in the sidewalk have to be coordinated. It's very important that it all works, so we don't get a certificate of occupancy. So we're pretty good at managing those kinds of things, and we don't anticipate, well, I don't want to jinx it, but we're pretty confident we'll be able to coordinate this accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is the number of school-aged children. At the last meeting, there was a question about the projected number of school-aged children expected to live at Royal Crest and how that impacts the schools. Today, there are 213 school-aged children that live at Royal Crest. In the various reports and studies done over the last year, the estimates of how many kids projected to reside at the site range from 205, which was a number actually provided by the town, and showed the number of kids actually going down, up to a high estimate of 302 students, or an additional 89 students. As there were several different estimates on the number of students in the project, we took a very conservative approach and included the impacts based on the high end of the estimates. Again, even in the worst-case scenario, the project is expected to generate $2.4 million in net revenue to the town. Any comments on that?
And just
Yeah,
to, go ahead, Kelly.
Just a question on the additional 89 students. Who provided that number, the additional 89?
TBA, one of the consultants that was asked to take a look at it.
I believe that was
Okay.
our peer reviewer. And what I was going to say is I believe at our next meeting, which is going to be a joint meeting with the select board
Yes.
on the 14th,
March 14th.
on March 14th, we should have someone from the town to answer any questions about this, as well as the peer reviewer available as well.
Yep.
All right, great. I just want to make sure that, so the additional, so our town review, our reviewer, the
Yes.
town consultant that we
Yes.
hired said there would be 89 additional students. I just want to be clear on the range of numbers.
Kelly, should I be looking at you to address your questions or someplace else?
Either
Mr.
one.
Chair.
Okay,
Yeah, you
all
can-
right. I don't want to
you
be
can just-
rude, turning my. Anyway, the point is, we erred on the conservative side, and we have every reason to believe that that number is going to be significantly greater than what was estimated. Okay, Merrimack College. There were several questions, comments regarding Merrimack College, which Merrimack is best able to answer. However, we want to put Merrimack's role into perspective. It represents only 13.1% of the total housing units and 10.5% of the total land area. While it is a piece of the ultimate financing of the project, we view Merrimack's presence on the site as very complementary to what we're trying to accomplish programmatically. We are very confident that Merrimack will successfully manage and control the student housing with a single controlled entry and 24/7 security. The students will bring, the students aren't all bad. They bring positive energy to the site. They'll activate the town green while school is in session. Beyond this, students and their families will support the high-quality ground floor retail users we expect to bring to the site, visiting prospective parents, current parents, and alumni to use both the stores and the inn. Finally, There are historical ties between Merrimack College and Royal Crest. One resident who lived, one of the first residents at Royal Crest, told us that Karl Yastrzemski lived there, Yaz himself, and he got his degree from Merrimack because he promised his mother he would get a college education. So a little bit of history there that brings those two together. Okay. Jobs. There was a question about job creation at the site. As far as construction jobs, we expect our project to create over 2,000 construction jobs during the 10-year period. As far as permanent jobs, we expect there to be up to 450 permanent jobs in the site between the office building, the retail, hotel, and our property management team. As a matter of Trinity corporate policy, we encourage our contractors, subcontractors, and vendors to hire local residents and to utilize local businesses where and when possible. This keeps the money closer to home and helps strengthen the local economy, which benefits all of us in the long run. Another question that came up was regarding displacement of existing residents. The construction timeline, as mentioned before, for the new development will be approximately 10 years and phased through different areas of the property. There are 49 buildings, 17 of which will be demolished to accommodate the first phase. Accordingly, there will be opportunities for residents that wish to stay at Royal Crest to move to other locations on site during construction. AIMCO has successfully redeveloped large properties while taking good care of and accommodating individual needs. More specifically, AIMCO will work with residents individually to meet their housing needs, employ an on-site resident relocation specialist, relocate within the site to similar units for those who wish to stay whenever possible, offer a first right to return to newly redeveloped units, and finally offer relocation to other AIMCO properties in the area or throughout the area. We think one of the best things about this project is offering a range of housing types to choose from, offering something for just about everyone in a place designed for them and that can fit their budget. Today, there are 588 outdated market rate apartments, many of which are occupied by college students. Our plan calls for affordable apartments, market rate apartments designed for current lifestyles in the market, a building dedicated to seniors and their needs, a purpose-built supervised student housing facility, and a number of townhouse-style units for people that want and need that type of housing. Beyond the type of housing, we are offering a wider range of sizes of housing, again, to meet the needs of a wider range of people. Today, Royal Crest contains only 2- and 3-bedroom apartments. Our new plan introduces a number of 1-bedroom units that are appropriate for early career professionals or young couples just starting out in town, or for older people looking to downsize.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There has been a lot of discussion about the market rates and the ability to increase the number of units in town so that young professionals could stay. And my recollection is that there's been a lot of questions about what is meant by market rate. So let's take the example of the type of housing that you just told us might be appropriate to keep young professionals in town. I know it's hard to predict these sort of things, but you're in the business.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate the market rate will be for one of those units that you're saying could be appropriate for young professionals?
You know, Mr. Boynton, I have to tell you, I am, like many people, stunned at how rents are going up.
Yeah.
It is everywhere, including North Andover, and this is, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, part of the problem.
Right.
There isn't enough supply.
Right.
So when you keep the supply constant, the prices are going to go up. Now, that's kind of good for real estate developers, to be sure.
Sure.
But I couldn't possibly tell you, because they've been going up 10, 15%, especially since the pandemic.
But here's the thing. You're a professional. You're assuring us meeting after meeting that these will be market rates that will help young professionals stay in town. What kind of calculation are you doing?
So
what
one
sort
of the things,
rate do you expect for those units?
one of the things that we have that you don't have, we propose that we don't currently have, we have right now a large 2- and 3-bedroom units, which make great accommodations for college students. But the total square footage involved is something of the past, that you're not building those kind of units, for one thing. There isn't a demand for those size units now. But one of the things we are doing is making the units smaller. more efficient, so your revenue per unit actually goes up, but your face rents stay somewhere near where they are today. We haven't done the calculations only because events are so far ahead of us relative to rent increases, I couldn't possibly tell you what they're going to be. But obviously,
Assure us, meeting after meeting, that these are going to make it more possible for young professionals to stay in town if you couldn't possibly do any calculations. I mean, what are you basing that judgment
I'm
on?
basing on-
Because we need to rely on your expertise. You're a professional.
Yep.
What are you basing those assertions on?
I'm basing that on the fact that the units that are going to be built here are going to be smaller, okay? And they're going to be lots of amenities. You have swimming pools. You have dog. What do they call them?
Dog parks?
No, not dog parks. Actually, we built a building that has a room with AIMCO, where people can bring their dog down and give it a bath and it can interact with it. I mean, these are the kind of amenities that demographic wants. And they will accept smaller units. They will accept smaller units because they have such an amenity-rich package. What that balance is what we're not getting in terms of size. You are getting something that's going to be close to a face rent you can afford. You couldn't afford the face rent in a 2 or 3 bedroom unit. The square footage involved would make it infeasible to deliver that at a price those young professionals can afford.
This is helpful to have this answer. I think this is the first time that I've heard the full explanation. You have no idea what the rents will be, but you do know that the units will be small, and so your judgment is that that could make it more affordable for
Yes.
young professionals.
It definitely will. It makes it way more accessible.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. So, you know, in any successful mixed-use development, you typically need pretty significant retail anchors,
Yeah.
right? Because you need to nucleate essentially other small businesses around it. So I'm curious, from AMCO's perspective, and this kind of builds off of Peter's point, in retaining the young professionals, what is the short list of those retail anchors you guys are looking at right now for this mixed-use development?
We can't disclose that. We can't disclose it because we've been asked not to disclose it.
How about types of?
A high-end convenience grocery store, high-end convenience retail, coffee shops, maybe a branch bank. The retail portion of it is going to be driven, as I mentioned before, by the fact you're going to have such a close association with the college, but also that the fact is there are going to be a lot of people living here who will be able to walk to the store as opposed to have to get in their car and drive someplace.
No, exactly. And just building off the point here is that if the thesis is mixed-use development retaining young professionals, and then the argument is net new revenue through meals tax or property tax
Yes.
increases, then I guess I'm just asking the question is I feel like that there needs to be a pretty robust retail anchor strategy, right?
Yeah, it's, the retail portion isn't huge. We originally thought we could, do something much more elaborate, but, we've done market studies. We think we've sized it. In that, we've also got the hotel, which will have some kind of restaurant. But we're pretty confident that between the combination of what demand there is there now and the demand we're going to create, that we'll be able to bring in some pretty attractive stores that will be great amenities, not only for the people that live there, but, everybody in town.
Thanks.
But again, there's a certain confidentiality in having these discussions that, hopefully we'll have some great announcements at some point. We're just not at liberty to share that now.
Got it.
Okay, so quickly, a number of comments were about just wanting to be reminded about the environmental benefits here. And I'm just going to run through a quick summary, and forgive me if I really want to get it over to questions, so some of this stuff has already been covered. But the current buildings are 50 years old, incredibly outdated. They have very little insulation and very inefficient heating systems. The new buildings will be all electric, with state-of-the-art new high-efficiency heating and air conditioning systems, efficient lighting and water fixtures, and high-performance insulation and building envelopes. I wish I could say that this was a unique virtue that we're bringing to the table, but the new energy codes, the stretch codes that we're going to be looking at over the next 12 to 18 months are going to require pretty much all of this. The new Royal Crest gives us the opportunity to completely redesign and install a new system that will correct all the drainage issues on this site. Just historically, this site was built prior to many of the properties around it that were built, and this site has, as a result of the runoff from those properties, inherited 55 acre-feet of runoff from other properties that we are going to manage and handle on-site. So it's going to be a very efficient, very state-of-the-art drainage system where we're containing most of that site and not burdening any downstream infrastructure. We'll actually expand and enhance the wetland areas on our site and introduce bioswales and innovative water management systems, again, to help naturally drain stormwater and drainage. Our project greatly improves walkability and biking infrastructure. Currently, the site is very automobile-oriented, and there are barely any sidewalks in the site. And if you want to walk anywhere, you actually have to walk in the street. Our new plan is truly walkable neighborhood, includes a 1.5-mile walking and biking trail that connects the new multi-use path in MassDOT's 114 project. Final page. We are working with the Merrimack Valley Regional Transit Authority to include stops on 2 of their bus lines, which will offer convenient connections to commuter rail stations and even a 1-seat ride to downtown Boston. We've submitted in our various materials specific locations where that bus stop's going to be. We'll also have electric vehicle charging stations and covered, secure bike parking. Water and sewer capacity. There were several questions about water and sewer capacity. As mentioned previously, the town commissioned a townwide study of water demand and usage, and that report confirmed that there is sufficient water supply for our project. Our engineers also submitted a peer-review engineering study of sewer capacity, and the assessment is there is sufficient capacity for our project, and here again, we're not going to overburden downstream infrastructure. Affordability. Last, there was a lot of discussion about affordability at the last hearing. For our project, the 97 affordable units are restricted to people earning a maximum 80% of area median income, known in the business as AMI. According to HUD, AMI is about $105,000 for a family of 4, so 80% of that is approximately $80,000. For a single person, it is about $56,000. To put this in perspective, again, these are upper limits, but these apartments are typically affordable to young people starting out in their career and otherwise might have to continue living at home, or teachers or firefighters who otherwise have to live out of town because of the lack of affordable housing in the town. Starting salaries for many town of North Andover positions align very well with these limits. We will work with the town and DHCD to request that preferences be given for current Royal Crest residents, town employees, and other applicants currently living in North Andover.
So just so people understand, so the 80% AMI is a maximum.
Yes.
So if you make, what was the number for an individual, 56?
Yes.
So if you're
It goes by family size. Yeah.
Right, so if you have a one individual wanting to qualify for one of the affordable units, if they make 56,000 or less, any kind of
Right.
number in there, then they qualify to potentially be in. And is it a lottery? Is that right?
Yes, but there will be a preference. We're going to establish a preference along the
So
lines
there's a
we
system
discussed.
and guidelines
Yeah.
and things like that.
It's going to have to meet fair housing, equal opportunity, but we can establish preferences.
Okay, but I think sometimes it's not always clear to people that number is kind of a maximum. So you could make 50, you could make 40, you could make
Right.
30, you could make 20. I mean, there'll be different guidelines and stuff like that, but there could be a range.
There could be.
And going up to approximately 80,000 for a family of 4, right?
That's true.
Okay.
So the revelation to us is we looked at what the starting salaries are in the town of North Andover, and they align almost perfectly to what the income limits are. And again, we will work with you in the town and DHCD to make sure that we can institute these preferences. Conclusion. Before I turn it over to questions, I want to make 2 important points about the zoning overlay that has been proposed. First, we must understand that any material deviation from the plan as proposed would very likely require a trip back to town meeting to get the necessary approvals. That's kind of a non-starter. The materiality determination is largely in the hands of the planning board. Therefore, any changes regarding use, nature of ownership, and/or significant reconfiguration of the site could very likely require town meeting approval. So we believe that those individuals expressing concerns about this development morphing into something else and something that's frightening, reflected in many of the comments that we've received, should take comfort in the language of the proposed zoning overlay and its attachments. Secondly, this is just a schematic plan. The zoning overlay language requires the developer to submit a development project review process, which gives the planning board the opportunity to review and comment on final site plans, floor plans, and elevations, and other usual and customary reviews reflected in the town's existing zoning bylaw. So as scary as it sounds to some of you, might be a little tired of seeing us, the process won't end if we are fortunate enough to get approved at town meeting. It will really be just the beginning. Nothing would please us more than to be able to come back to you in a year or so with specific buildings to propose and seek your permission to commence construction. As always, we would welcome your guidance and input. Thank you.
All right. So what we'll do now is I'm going, go ahead.
2 questions.
Okay, is that okay? Sure, go ahead, yeah.
Did I hear you correctly that you just said some members of the planning board are morphing this into something
No,
scary?
I did not say that.
What did you
In
mean
the
by that?
comment letters, many of them express, legitimate anxiety that, yeah, this is what we're looking at now, but what is it going to be in 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
And I
Well-
don't think they understand that what we're doing here is baked into the zoning overlay, and that, the concerns that this is going to morph into something frightening are really, in the context of the zoning overlay, shouldn't be an issue. Because again, any material change to this plan is going to be in your hands.
Well, maybe I'm missing your point, but I would tell you that I find part of what is proposed frightening for this town with respect to tripling the number of square footage built from 800,000 to 1.4 million?
Right.
No, 2.4 million built square footage. Tripling or more the number of cars, putting a tremendous increase in the density on that parcel, and doing it in a section of town that has the worst traffic from 125 to 114 to the Andover bypass, even though we're very fortunate that Mass DOT is doing a project there to improve it. But what makes it frightening is that this could consume all of the benefits, or nearly all of the benefits, of that Mass DOT project as soon as it's built, rather than giving the town 20 or 30 years of growth space based on that Mass DOT project. So I will tell you that parts of this do frighten me, but I have one more question.
Maybe just one thing, I don't think that's my takeaway from what was being said was that there's concern that if the project is approved as is, that somehow down the line, it would then change and these buildings wouldn't be 4 stories, they would be 6 stories, or they wouldn't be dorms, they would be this.
Good point.
I think that's what the point was.
that was
Good
the point
point,
I was
and
trying to
thank you,
overlay.
thank you for that clarification. My other
yeah.
question is this. We had some, what I thought was very constructive discussion at a previous meeting, and I was hoping we were going to hear more from you at this meeting to clarify. This constructive discussion we previously had was comparing the tallest 4-story buildings in town now, which are on the order of 55 feet, 4-story buildings with peaked roofs. And that's important because the peaked roof, of course, creates additional height. And what we're hearing is that for this development, there was a reduction from 5 stories to 4 stories, which seemed like a really helpful adjustment on the part of the people proposing this. But 4 stories with peaked roof at 70 feet. Now, that's 1.5, half again as high as the highest 4-story with peaked roof in town. And I know we talked about it. It was a constructive discussion. I still can't get my head around why are these 4-story buildings with peaked roofs half again as high as the highest 4-story buildings with peaked roofs in town? I don't get it. My undergraduate degree is in engineering, so I have some sense of, although it's ocean engineering, so that's a civil with wet feet. which is different. So, but I understand engineering concepts, and I can't get my head around it. Help us understand why your four-story buildings are half again as high as the highest four-story buildings in town.
We've discussed this before.
Yes.
And first of all, we made a significant change to eliminate the 5 stories.
Yep.
The 4 stories could meet the standard that you're speaking about, except that there was a strong sentiment expressed that people wanted to see some kind of design that would give some interest and some diversity to these structures. So what we're really building up top there is not occupiable. It'll contain various systems and things like that. But we think adding this, and in addition, that's an additional cost. That's not cheap, and there's no revenue coming from that. So it was a trade-off, Mr. Boynton, that we wanted this to be varied. We wanted to have some interest, some texture, and also we wanted it to try to be reminiscent of traditional New England architecture.
Could we get maybe the architect to answer this? I think just actually some more specifics about actual heights of floors might be helpful. But just to point out, so we have in these, it's a little too tight.
Too tight?
Yeah. So we have buildings D1 and D2, mixed income 40B, 69 feet. So that's kind of what Peter was talking about, and 69, and then 59 depending. Then we have, I don't know, about 10 buildings that are 4 stories that are 53 feet, 55. So that's in line with the ones current. So I guess and then the dorms, 4 stories, 69. So what's that 16-foot difference between the mixed income multifamily and the other ones? So some are 69 and some are 53, and then the student housing.
Yeah.
What is that extra 16 feet? Is that all unoccupied space at the top, or is it each floor is 17 feet instead of 15 feet, or 18 feet instead of 15 feet? I guess where's the difference?
What that does is accommodate ground floor retail. You have to have a certain height in
So
ground
the
floor
first
retail.
floor
Right,
is
first
taller.
floor is taller.
Which is pushing
So
the
anything on
total
top
height
of that
the
is going to be
4-story
pushed
higher.
up. Right, right.
Okay. So, I mean,
So it's a ground floor retail. I'm not sure what the minimum dimension is, but it's pretty significant.
Well-
And then you have 3 stories of residence on top of that.
That's an answer to the question that we didn't get to last time. So
So,
thank you.
right.
Very helpful.
you still may not like 70,
Correct.
69 feet versus
But we have
55,
the reason.
but there's, at least we got
The-
to.
The only
answer that.
ones that I've called attention to, and I hope that there is agreement to this, is that we did incorporate this clock tower concept that we think will bring visual interest to the property and give it a uniqueness. And also, we like the idea of the hotel having more of a monumental look to it. It's set, 450, 500 feet back from 114, but we are looking
So
for some from grace on those 2 structures.
I would just comment to you that through all of these discussions, I haven't heard anybody complain yet about the hotel or the clock tower. What has been difficult, from my perspective, is when we're asking about the heights of other buildings, what we hear back is, well, we have the clock tower and the hotel, but that's not what we're asking. And so I will just share with you, that has been a frustrating part of the discussion. We ask for an explanation on heights, and we hear about the clock tower and the hotel, which we're not, at least I haven't heard any objections to unless you want us to.
I'm sorry. If I offended you somehow, I
No,
apologize.
I'm just saying it made the discussion difficult because it distracted from the question that was being asked.
It wasn't meant to be a distraction. It was just completing that.
I haven't heard anybody complain about the clock tower or the hotel. Maybe they have, but I haven't heard it.
Are we good with answers to questions? For
We're
now?
good.
For now, okay. Question?
Just one clarifying question. The heights are inclusive or exclusive of the mechanicals?
They are, in your zoning code, there are exceptions for mechanicals.
Okay.
All of this stuff is going to come back to you guys.
Okay.
All of it.
So it's exclusive.
I believe it's exclusive. yeah.
Exclusive, okay, thanks.
Need
No.
to know the answer.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's inclusive. I'm sorry, it's
Inclusive.
inclusive. Yes.
Okay, inclusive, all right.
Okay. So those are the things we know. All right, so now I'm going to read the public comments that have come in prior to the meeting. Gene, if any have come in during the meeting, let me know.
I have some.
Okay. We'll do those, then we'll go to the people here. So for everyone, anyone who's new to this, or anyone who's, for some reason, come and watch every meeting, I am just reading, at first, just reading verbatim what was sent in. It's not my opinion, not the opinion of anyone on the board. It's the opinion or the question or comment of whoever sent it in. We will then try to answer the question if appropriate, or give it to the right person to answer, as said. But just I've been accused in the past of putting my opinion in. I'm just literally reading it. Okay, so number one, Friday, February 18th, 2002, from Don Schallman. The Lawrence Eagle Tribune reported in a front-page article published on February 8th, 2022, shell casings found in a police investigation into reports of shots fired at Royal Crest 1 week earlier on February 1st, 2022. Since that article of February 8th, I've not seen nor heard any further information or discussion about the reported incident. Needless to say, I'm curious and concerned about a report of shots fired in any residential neighborhood in North Andover. There will be, according to article, increased presence of law enforcement, including Merrimack College Police at Royal Crest. The article also reports there have been communications from Merrimack College to its students, the North Andover Police Department, North Andover Town Management, and Royal Crest Management. The communication to the students included the request that any students with information contact the Merrimack College or North Andover Police Department. Those statements raise questions about jurisdiction, boundaries, and responsibilities of college police on property not owned by the college. They also raise questions about the extent to which Merrimack College expects the North Andover Police to be responsible for monitoring and enforcing conduct in the new development's college dormitory. Has the planning board participated in or been apprised of the college's communications with town management referenced in the article? If so, can the board provide any additional information on the incident or the subsequent investigation? So the answer to that is no. It's not something that's come before the board, nor do I particularly think it's within our jurisdiction. Anyone else have any?
The only comment I would make, and I leave it to you, because if it's not in our jurisdiction, then end of story, but earlier in these discussions, the planning board asked for some views from the town police chief because there were questions of public safety, and it was an opportunity for the board to hear from the expert in town. So does this fall into a similar category where the board wants to ask the police chief for any comments as it relates to public safety issues? And if not, then so be it.
I don't think this article about shots fired has anything to do with this project. I mean, I think we rightfully talked about questions of management and responsibilities and things like that. I just don't think this particular article or this news story is relevant to our discussions. I mean, I could be, if people want to, or if there's something that people want to follow up on, it doesn't seem relevant to.
I'm happy to go with your judgment on
Yeah.
that. I'm just suggesting, since we've done it before, but the
Yeah.
previous time was to give us advice on the number of students crossing
Right, and traffic
114 without
safety.
the benefit of a bridge and
Right.
based just on lights.
Yeah, I don't think this, I mean, it's certainly concerning, but I'm not sure that any information would have any bearing on our zoning bylaw. Okay, number two, another one from Mr. Schallman, Don Schallman, Monday, February 21st. At the planning board meeting on February 15th, 2022, a spokesperson for Trinity Financial stated its construction scheduling includes a sequencing plan to transition current Royal Crest residence units in the new development. Please ask the developers to compare the rents to be charged for the new units offered for this transition to the rents the to be relocated current residents pay. So that actually kind of came up, not exactly in that context, but they did not have an answer as to what the new rents would be. So sort of an answer to that question. Bill, go ahead.
Just add to that, though,
Yeah.
just to clarify, though, in helping to transition the residents, the goal is to help them find housing in similar market rate housing of what they are
Yes.
currently in.
Yeah.
And well, let me ask you this. Can you get us the numbers of what the current market rate rental units are at Royal Crest based on 1 bedroom, 2
Yes.
bedroom, 3 bedroom?
We can do that.
Okay, so that's
Can
good.
I add to that?
Yeah.
And then a
Yeah.
comparison of maybe available rental units in that same market rate that maybe are available for
Yeah.
transitioning.
Right.
When you say available, do you mean to become available in the new development or elsewhere in the community?
Elsewhere in the community as they transition during the phasing.
Yeah, so what is, if we can't get a great sense of what market rate will be in 4 years, or 3 years when, theoretical development be, what is it now,
Yeah.
At least we have a baseline for comparisons. What is it at Royal Crest? What is it, at some of these other newer places that have either been developed or, does Avalon have potential rents that they've already kind of stated, or the ones at the near the senior center, are there proposed rates for those apartments, just so we have a sense of what it is, so that, ultimately, if we ever get to a point where we're talking about what are the market rates versus the affordable rates, at least some data would be helpful.
We can do that. We
Okay,
can do that.
great. February 28th from Bill Callahan. Good afternoon, Gene. I'm writing about Tuesday night's hearing, which I am unable to attend due to business travel. I would like my comments below read into the public record. That's what we're doing. My name is Bill Callahan, and I live at 23 Lyman Road. I've been following the debate over the Royal Crest project fairly closely over the past 2 years. Excuse me. Context is important. The Royal Crest development team is in year 2 of working through a process of working with the town. They've immersed themselves in the town's master plan and aligned the project with that plan. As I watch planning board meetings, I've seen the plan change in response to board and citizen input. The team is working to partner with stakeholders to produce a project that works. The mixed-use development plan is different and more complex than many others we've seen in the past. There are lots of other developers who'd simply build a 40B development on that parcel with maximum speed and minimum input from North Andover. The project will result in North Andover being at or over its allotted number of affordable housing units. This is important. That will mean that the next big parcels up for sale in North Andover can't go through the streamlined 40B process, but the North Andover planning process as written. This is a chance for the town to see a parcel which already has multifamily housing on it be used to its full potential. It's accessible without placing a burden on side streets. It will activate and encourage commercial activity in our business districts. Thank you, Bill Callahan. Okay, no questions there, so we'll go on to the next one. February 28th, 2022. This is from, let's scroll to the bottom, Ann Gray at 49 Rosedale Avenue. Okay. My name is Ann Gray. It was nice to, dear Gene, my name is Ann Gray. It was nice to meet you this afternoon at the town hall. And thank you, Gene, for meeting with people that come in and have questions. We appreciate that. That's side editorial there. I have lived at 49 Rosedale Ave for 35 years. My property abuts the Royal Crest property. I have received no formal notifications regarding this project, which I would have expected as an abutter. My involvement has been by word of mouth in the newspaper. I signed up for notifications from Royal Crest and have participated in Zoom calls with the developers from the very beginning. Unfortunately, I was not aware of any public hearings along the way, which I would have attended. I subscribed to the Eagle Tribune and received the hard copy newspaper, but I do not read the classified, so I just found out about the March 1st and March 15th planning board meetings. I am unable to attend due to a previous commitment, so I write to express my views on the project. I have 3 primary concerns: density, Merrimack College, and crime. Density, the project creates another town within our town. The density of buildings, people, and cars is far beyond the nature and the character of the town and well exceeds the current zoning limits by a significant magnitude. Then there's a chart of current zoning versus proposed. North Andover population is 30,915 based on the 2020 census. If we assume 2.5 people on average living in each apartment and 824 students in the dorm, then 10% of the town population will live on these 76 acres, which is probably not even a square mile. Given current zoning, I find the proposal absurd. Merrimack College. This development appears to be solving a Merrimack College problem. It is well known that Merrimack College has insufficient housing. Royal Crest appears to be solving their problem. Dorms. Dorms should stay on the Merrimack College campus. We all know what happens at college dorms, and those activities should not be mixed with family residential living. The drinking, the drugs, and the first warm day in April hanging out on the new Royal Crest Town Green are all things that do not mix with families and children, which is part of Royal Crest's target market. Merrimack College just finished a dorm project. If they are so in need of housing, why didn't they accommodate for needed capacity and build a high-rise on that side of their campus? I have heard differing information regarding the RC dorms. Who owns land on which the dorm will reside? Who will build it? And will it need town approval? There are only 135 parking spots for 824 students. That very low ratio leads me to believe this dorm will not house upper-class students. Will this be a freshman or sophomore dorm notorious for partying? Question mark. A question mark as to will this be a freshman or sophomore dorm, I'm guessing. Given that our Royal Crest can provide for educational organizations, why not put Merrimack College administration offices there instead? This will ease the impact on the North Andover community. All right, why don't we finish and then I'll come back for some of these questions. Non-dorm housing, it is not unreasonable to project that as Merrimack College grows, more and more of its students will reside in these apartments, simply making it another campus. Is it permissible by law to restrict renting to college students? I would like a commitment in writing from Royal Crest that the restriction will be in place for all apartments and townhouses. My property abuts the woods where the kids party. I do not want to see that increase. I quote a letter from VHB to you dated, this is traffic. I quote a letter from VHB to you dated 1/31/22 to answer a question raised at the 10/26/21 Planning Board meeting about how the Royal Crest project would affect a typical North Andover resident. With respect to the 114 corridor, if we were to assess a typical commuter trip heading eastbound through the study area in the morning, the weekday morning peak period will experience an aggregated reduction in delay of 43 seconds. However, assuming that same trip is heading westbound through the study area in the weekday evening peak will experience an increase of 145 seconds. This is mainly attributed to the creation of a new signalized intersection of the Royal Crest site driveway and Walsh Way, which will serve the redevelopment, Merrimack College, and the signalized pedestrian crossing. Emphasis added. The effects of adaptive signaling do not erase this detriment. The issue with 114 corridor is primarily rush hour. How can the MA.DOT project be considered a success if the commute time increases? As taxpayers, we deserve better. How much money, time, and inconvenience will be incurred for worse traffic directly attributed to the Royal Crest project and Merrimack College? Question mark, this makes no sense. Crime. Many years ago, we had a problem with car break-ins in neighborhoods off Route 114. Police were quoted as saying that quick access to 114 and then to 495 makes these locations easy targets for theft. I believe Royal Crest will be a target for property and drug crime, with particular concern for drug crime at the dorms. Royal Crest currently has one entrance to the property secured by a gate. The new design has 4 roads leading in and out, all with quick access to 114 and 495. What is the town's plan to police the area? Is it possible to include a police substation as part of the plan? When crime occurs in the dorms, are those crimes recorded and tracked by the town and the college? Town residents and parents have a right to know. I have a neighbor who is a sexual assault nurse examiner for the state of Massachusetts. She examined and treated many Merrimack College students and others from North Andover who have been raped. Merrimack College does not report off-campus assaults as part of their campus statistics. When crime occurs in a rental unit by college students, are those crimes recorded and tracked by the town and the college? Town residents and parents have a right to know. Other issues, townhomes. Although there's nothing stated in Royal Crest's most recent plan, it's my understanding from talking to you today that Royal Crest has stated in the record that townhomes will be condominiums with a price tag of around $750,000. Thus, revenue projections will be based on those values. I contend that the value will be lower due to the fact that there are 3 nearby college dorm buildings. Hard to imagine spending that much money to live near a dorm. Fiscal impact. I read the fiscal impact from September 2021 along with the method for driving increased cost in town services. This assessment only looks at annual costs. For example, $240,000 to $480,000. Estimate for increased police costs. Long-term costs do not appear to be addressed. How do those costs relate to the headcount, pension liabilities, health insurance, and other benefits? I'd like to see a long-term analysis that sees these costs. Town meeting 2/3 supermajority vote. It is my understanding that Town Council will recommend using the Housing Community Act to reduce the town meeting vote to a simple majority. I'm strongly against doing so and believe it is an underhanded way to get this approved. This project radically changes the face of our town. Zoning changes require a 2/3 supermajority vote because they matter to the town and they should not change lightly. Reducing the passing of something as impactful as the RC project to a simple majority is an affront to the citizens of the town. Low community involvement due to poor advertising notification by the town. Many people are interested in this project but don't know about the meetings that have taken place. Placing a classified ad in the Eagle Tribune, while it may meet the letter of the law, doesn't really meet the spirit. A better method of communication would be helpful. I personally would have attended most meetings. I'm concerned that when town meeting arrives, many attendees will be uninformed and not making a sound decision when voting. Access to documents is difficult. All parties involved here have done a great deal of work, and there are volumes of documents. Over the past week, I spent considerable time reading those documents. I struggled to find the correct information. Had I not had the assistance of planning board staff over the phone, I never would have known where to look. Although Google Drive helps residents access to the information, there's no straightforward way to even know where to look. Going forward, it would be helpful to have some type of indexing method to find desired data. Thank you. I appreciate all your and your staff have done on this project as a Herculean task. Okay, I'm going to go back and try to hit some of these comments. Advertising, in terms of notice, I somewhat disagree. I think there's been a lot of notice. In terms of actual legal notice, we always try to follow what's required in the law so that we're not favoring or unfavoring one project, but there certainly has been a lot of discussion, and both at these meetings, at select board meetings, at social media and other places throughout the year. So we've tried as much as we can to do a lot. Town meeting, 2/3 supermajority vote. So it's not town council's recommendation as to what the vote is. So the new Housing Choice Act, which was enacted 2020 or 2021?
January 2021.
January 2021.
If I
So
remember right.
the very beginning of last year changed the rules as to when a 2/3 supermajority is needed. So it's not town council's recommendation. The question is going to be, and actually for this board to consider and look at, does the bylaw as drafted, or any ordinance, but in this case a bylaw, meet the requirements of the Housing Choice Act in terms of qualifying for a 50%? If it does, then it's 50%. If it doesn't, then it's 2/3, as other zoning articles are. So it's correct. Generally, in the past, zoning articles have been 2/3. Housing Choice Act was enacted by the legislature, encouraging multifamily by right housing. So the question is going to be, does this bylaw meet that act? If it does, then it's a 50% vote. If it doesn't, then it's a 2/3 vote. My understanding of the way it's drafted, to me, it appears to be a 50%, but that's something that we're going to look at and decide on. Fiscal impact, I think we talked about that at the last meeting, and we will have someone from the town or the school to talk about that at the next meeting, correct, Jean?
For the school department.
For the school department, right.
Questioning fiscal impact related to tax revenue for townhouses, that would be a different peer reviewer.
Okay.
So if you want that topic carried, I can look to do that.
I mean, I think we've done I don't remember that ever really coming up in the peer review of the financial impact. I don't remember anyone really having a problem with that. And again, I think it's fair probably based on today's market and our peer reviews. Could that change in the next 5 years? Sure. Could go up, could go down, could stay the same. But I'm not sure it's. I don't think we need to further address that. The crime issue, I don't really find that to be substantial. If anyone wants to talk about that, we can, but I'm not sure how this proposal changes anything, and especially for the worse in terms of crime potential. But if anyone has concerns, we can raise it, and if we want to ask the police chief if any concerns, we can do that, but I don't think that's worthwhile. But if anyone wants to, just let me know. We talked about the traffic. Regarding the dorms, who owns the land? I believe it was discussed that either Merrimack or as part of the proposal, either Merrimack or a third-party nonprofit would own the land, and again, Merrimack would manage. Will it need town approval? It's part of the bylaw as drafted. So there's no Dover being requested. It is part of the bylaw as currently proposed. Freshman or sophomore dorm? Actually, that's a question we can have answered. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Do we have any info on who would be proposed to live in this dorm? Jeff? If you have an answer to that?
I do. Jeff Doggett, Merrimack College, also Johnson Street here in North Andover. The buildings would be for upper class. We don't have freshmen and sophomores normally living this type of housing. They're more in your typical dormitory residence hall type projects that's on the campus.
And what about living in Merrimack now? The rental. So right now in Merrimack, there are about 800 to 1,000. Right now at Royal Crest, there are about 800 to 1,000 Merrimack students living there currently?
There's, to the best of our knowledge, there's somewhere between 700 and 800 students there.
Okay, thanks.
We ourselves rent, I think it's over 550 that are through a lease that we do, and then the students live in the housing. The rest of them are on their own, either with a direct lease that they do with Royal Crest, or a lease that, say, a parent or someone else does, and they live there on their own.
Are those upperclassmen or lowerclassmen? Or mixed?
We house almost 90% of our freshmen. Most of those that don't live on campus still live at home. Sophomores are probably roughly the same, so I'm going to guess that for those that are on their own, they're probably upperclassmen as well. But I couldn't give an accurate depiction of that completely, because if the lease is through, say, a parent or something like that, we might not know what that is on our own.
But fair to say mostly upperclassmen? You would
Yes.
think? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, sir?
I did, just a quick question, because I've seen a couple people make some comments about the concern of parking around the dormitories. Is there parking available for students across the street on Merrimack's campus if they were to need additional parking?
So we have overnight parking on our campus. We also rent parking spaces off the campus and shuttle back and forth. We do that in Andover at Landmark, or Andover Landing, excuse me. And before that, we actually used to rent the parking spaces in the parking garage downtown. And that was before whatever the housing project is that's now going on right behind, I think it's High Street, right? So we used to rent there and shovel people down, and now we do that over to Andover Landing. And we meet the needs currently of that. Most of our students actually don't want to bring cars to campus. They either stay local, they use the shuttle that we go around both Andover and North Andover, or they do what most college students do, like they double up, triple up if they're going to go somewhere.
Do you know what percentage of your students have cars?
We house, I'm going to say, around 2,700 students. I'm going to guess maybe 35% of them, maybe, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question, next comment. Allison Smith, to whom this is February 28th. To whom it may concern, I'm writing to oppose the rezoning and new development in Royal Crest. As a resident of Chestnut Street, the construction over 10 years will result as Chestnut Street being a cut-through and will cause even more traffic on this quiet residential street. The planned buildings are too tall, setting a precedent for the next developer. The added tax revenue will not outweigh the damage done to our roads, water, sewage, additional schools, teachers, police, and fire needed to deal with the jump in population. Okay, that is all of the comments that came in before the meeting. So, do we have comments that have come in during the meeting?
Yes.
So why don't we do those, and then we'll get to people that are here.
So this is a comment received from Andrea O'Donnell. Question for Royal Crest Development Team. For the record, aside from the affordable units, what will rent for each apartment type, studio, 1, 2, 3 bedroom? What will your listing price for the condominiums, townhouses be? I think we answered that a little bit earlier.
I think, yeah, we hit that.
So you're going to provide information on the existing rents, and the future rents are somewhat unknown.
So I have a question on that. For the financial analysis to the town, was that based on projected sale price of the units? And if so, then you have a number you could share with us.
There is a number in there for the townhomes, not for the rental units, but the townhomes have a number in there.
Huh.
They do.
But there's nothing about projected rental that's part of the financial analysis.
I don't think so, because I don't think that's what
Yeah,
because no, it's a fair question, but
Yeah.
the property tax is not based on
Right,
how much
right.
the rent is. It's based on the value of the property as a whole. So it wouldn't factor in. But there is a number in there, I remember,
What is that number?
for the townhomes.
Yeah.
I thought it was 750. Yeah,
That's the purchase price, not the tax
Right.
price. Yeah.
right. That's the projection. That's what's based on the fiscal. So if they're cheaper, then yes, the finances would go down. If they're more expensive, then it would go up.
Okay, so the second comment was also from Andrea O'Donnell, and she states, with regard to available commercial space, what percentage of such space outside of these large-scale developments is currently vacant in North Andover? So that,
For which,
again,
for residential?
for the commercial space. So with regard to available commercial space, what percentage of such space outside of these large-scale developments is currently vacant in North Andover. And I think you asked earlier if we could get some assessment for retail space that is.
Yeah, my understanding was it was about 10%, but if we can get data, but I'm not sure, I guess I didn't know, outside of these developments, I'm not sure which developments, but if the question is, what's the vacant retail space, let's get an answer to that. Again, I think it's about 10%, but.
Okay, and the third comment is also from Andrea O'Donnell. As a follow-up to my market rate question, how is the developer doing their projected ROI on this development if they do not have any idea of what they will charge for rents?
These questions are getting harder and harder. We did some studies a couple of years ago looking at projected rents based upon what was going on in the market. That we didn't, there were a number of properties that had rents by the square foot, that we took that into the analysis in our projections. But I would say that between then and now, there has been an unanticipated, unprecedented increase in rents. I gather it will trickle down to increased value of the property, but again, it's a crystal ball that we don't have a particularly good answer for that. We can be very clear about the affordable rents. That's governed by the state and HUD, and those rents will be adjusted based upon CPI, and those units will be affordable in perpetuity.
Yep.
Okay. Any members of the public that wish to make comments or ask questions can do so now. You don't have to. That was a lot.
Can we just, for Kelly who can't see,
Yep.
describe the room?
So we have about 5, 10, 15, 20 to 25 people. That seems fair here. It's a good crowd. It's like the old days. I like it. Okay, stand up. If so that's the price, though. You have to come up. You have to tell us who you are, where you live.
I just found out,
Hold
I
on, you
know
have to-
this
you have-
Wilcrest.
hold on, you have to-
My
yeah.
name is Priscilla. I live in town. I live on Pembroke Road.
Okay.
And I just found out, I mean, I know the Wilcrest has been going on, but I've been looking through the town website for information, when the meetings were. I got an email today, just today, saying this meeting was tonight. I'm not aware of any of the meetings going on. No one really reads the paper anymore. I mean, we get to internet.
What?
So why aren't these meetings posted on the town website?
They are.
I looked, I scoured. Where, in a little corner where we can't find them? I looked the whole website.
So we could go and look. So I will.
There was the Board of Assessors meeting tonight. I can tell you all the meetings that were going on, except for this one.
So what I would recommend, and there is a email you can send that you can get emails that tells you when every meeting is.
But if I don't know how to apply for it,
No,
how
that's
am I
what I'm
gonna
going to get you that.
It's your job as the town officials to get out to the town for all it's not our job to seek it. You should be posting it. And where we can get the information.
Hold on.
And it's, a lot of
Hold-
meetings have been
Yes.
going on that
Okay,
we're not
okay,
privy
so-
to.
So I've displayed it. So in the upper left-hand side, there's a Connect with Us.
Where?
The upper left-hand side, it says
Okay,
Connect
yeah,
with Us.
yeah.
And you can sign up to have any agenda sent to your email account. They're posted to Facebook, they're posted to Twitter, social media accounts. And then in the middle, where the green tab says Upcoming Meetings, and every single meeting that's upcoming has to be posted with 48-hour notice. And so tonight's meeting, March 1st at 7 PM, is the Planning Board. And when you click on the agenda,
Okay.
every single item being discussed tonight has either been added to this meeting packet at request of someone, or when you click on the highlight, all the documents are there for you to review.
Okay, that's good.
I would recommend to connect with us to subscribe to agendas is a great function.
I do.
So yeah.
I
So
do.
so it
And I never got this one. I do.
Okay.
I do get all the things in
came
my
on
email.
Thursday.
Huh?
It came on, I just know I got it, I know I get it on mine on Thursday. and
Okay, I'll do it again. I'll
Okay.
subscribe again. Maybe I'll get double thing, but I do.
That could
subscribe.
happen.
The other important thing I'd like to show is on the community development website. This is pretty unique, and it's based on the size of this scope. I mean, we've been talking about it for 18 months, and so a website is maintained called the Proposed Rural Crest Redevelopment. And every single meeting that has been had has a link to it. It has the project details as it's progressed, so the January reduction is posted first. Every single plan, every single meeting has a link to it, every single fiscal impact, all the documents are here. Does it take a little time? It certainly will, because there's a lot of information.
Yeah,
but
it's okay. I
That's
just-
on the
yeah.
Economic Development website, and it's a
Okay.
progression since September of 2020, I believe.
And it's a lot, and I know several people have said, can we get just like an easy synopsis or an easy way to get through it? There's not really an easy way, just because there has been so much data and different
if you-
changes in plans, so it's just not that, it's
Like,
not
they
simple.
don't post when they do like the assessors meeting like they have tonight. They're not gonna post what they're having on, but at least they post a meeting, that there is a meeting tonight.
So we have
We'll
both.
post it.
Ours has, they'll say there's a meeting, and then you can click on the agenda, and it'll tell you
Okay.
everything that's on.
All right.
So that you'll get, this agenda would come, and it would come with links. You can click on any of the links, and it'll show all the documents that have been submitted to.
Okay. And also, like, the project sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful. I worry about the traffic. And this, I believe, is going to benefit more Merrimack College. Because people in that community will shop in there. Only the people in there or the college will go over there and do their shopping. For the rest of the community, for us to go in there, we have to get into a car, because it's on a highway, and actually physically go in there to shop. So it's not going to benefit the community, even though we're going to have to pay the price of it, and we're going to have to, we're not going to benefit from it. The only ones who are going to benefit are the people actually living in that little community in Merrimack College. So you're actually asking the whole community to sacrifice the traffic, the overcrowded schools. So you have to think of that when you go ahead and approve this. And if you can fix it or make it maybe a smaller, or, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla.
I would just make one comment, if
Yep.
that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
The point about schools has been a very interesting discussion point during these meetings. I think we have gotten a pretty good analysis that shows the estimated number of students, which is helpful. But I also think we have not gotten an analysis of whether that relatively small number of additional students will trigger the town having to build a new school. And that's a big, big difference. And as a member of the planning board right now, I have an idea of the estimated number of students. I cannot make a judgment of whether or not this will impose major costs of a new school. And we've talked about it, but we don't have an answer.
I believe we'll have an answer at the next meeting.
Okay.
That's my understanding, because it's a fair question. John's raised it. We've
Yep.
raised it a couple times. It's my understanding that town manager likely, or someone,
There's a facilities master plan too being considered, and that will be discussed at the next meeting.
and so it's a great question, because I think that overlaps more than just planning. So I actually think it
Right.
fits well in the joint meeting with the select board, because that could be a really game changer if that was required.
Well, it
obviously.
gets to the point that we've heard often from fellow residents that it's important not just to review this project by project,
Yep.
but consider these things in a broader context. One of which is the sequence of large residential multifamily units, one after another, for the last 10-plus years. What's the cumulative effect on things like building a new school? So that will be very helpful.
And I think the question is, okay, let's go through the numbers, how many students, okay. Let's talk about the discrete fiscal impact, how many teachers would that, in a vacuum, how many would that be? Okay, now, if we actually did incorporate 80 new students over a period of 4 years, where would they actually go? and then what would that mean, and put that into your facilities master plan. Can you accommodate that? Can you not accommodate that? Would you have to change things to accommodate that, and what are the possible outcomes? And those are all fair, and hopefully we'll have answers to.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm very interested in that, and I do know, I mean, having that information, what the increase is, and while it's not this development's issue, kind of from where we're at now, knowing some, our newest school in Brad Street, right, we're full there. There's programming happening in the hallways. So what does this mean, even if it's a low number of students, 89, 3, whatever it is, what does this mean for the students going to that school?
Yep, so I'm very confident that we'll have an answer. And if we don't, that's a big problem. So I'm very confident that we will. Yes.
Hi, my name's Carolyn Kilcourse, resident of North Andover, Hamilton Road. Going to take you back memory lane a little bit. When my husband and I were getting married, we couldn't afford Royal Crest. And then you couldn't have children there. So it was quite different.
That was a rule?
It was restricted.
Wow.
Young professionals,
Didn't know that.
no children, no
Okay.
families.
Thank you.
Now, move along a few years, I become a mom, and I go back to school with my husband's blessings, full-time days. I didn't start at Merrimack, but I finished there. And one day I came out of that entrance onto 114, where you come out of, like the Rogers Center
Yeah.
and the rink that they've now got closed. And I turned right. It was winter. The snow was piled up. And I came up, and there's that little chute ramp. Only but for the grace of God, I was not the first car, because the light turned green and the first car went through. Well, it was green. He got through. Before I could get there, it turned red, and a car came flying down 125 and broadsided him. I don't even know to this day where he was going, because that's the entrance of Royal Crest. And I stopped and pulled over, and I gave the gentleman my information so the police could. But the amount of traffic there, by any chance, has the town been told from Mass DOT where those lane increases are going to be? Because it's horrific from that traffic light toward Middleton.
Yes, we do have that information as to where those lane increases, where the added lanes would be.
Yeah, like where are
Yes.
they going to put those added lanes in to accommodate, obviously, a lot of increase in traffic?
Yep.
The only other thing I want, in comparison to Avalon project and the Sutton Street one that's going on, plus Vegeta Farms that was just done, do we know what the going rate for a one-bedroom apartment is there, if they do exist there?
We're gonna get that.
Because my hairdresser cannot afford to
good.
be there,
Yeah.
and he would only need one bedroom. I'm talking Vegeta Farm.
So, I mean, it's going to be. We'll get that information. An interesting. It may even wind up being an interesting aside that I don't know if there's anything that's particularly affordable with rents, in this city or other cities. But we'll get all that information and compare it, just based on what there is now.
But the traffic frightens me, and even now going down 114 with that blinking red light thing, we're waiting for a major
Hawkeye,
catastrophe
yeah.
because it makes no sense at all. And nowhere have I heard that Merrimack or this development group is going to try to change something there, build an overpass like we have by the high school over 125.
So we said
Done
that
do underneath?
There was some discussion about it. It seems unlikely, but there is going to be a fully signalized intersection.
Well, I'm with the lady that says Merrimack should be building on the other side. Go buy more of those homes down by Monacan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It's so funny, when I first say it, nobody wants to talk, and then it's like then it's a waterfall. No, it's great. It's just an interesting phenomenon.
Hi.
Hi.
Karen Fugue. I'm in North Andover, 517 Ray Street. So I fully support this project. I think this is a great project. I really like the mixed-use development. I think that this is the way of the future. I think that if North Andover wants to be a town and remain a town which is desirable to live in, we want to build things where people can live and work and eat and buy in a walkable community. And I disagree that it only benefits the people who are living immediately there. I think this is something where I would want to live in this. I would want to see downtown built out like this. I hear people on the traffic, and that certainly is a concern. Just because the number of people in the area is going to increase, which it obviously is, that doesn't have to mean the traffic is going to, because if you are creating a walkable community, then people don't have to have cars. If you're creating a community with a lot of access to public transit, which is what this is trying to do, then people don't have to have cars. If the town is going to grow, and we don't grow walkability and we don't grow public transit access, inevitably we will have more traffic, regardless of whether it's this development, another development, whether we build further out, there's going to be more traffic. So trying to build something where we encourage walkability and we encourage public transit, I think that's really, really important. The other thing is people have talked about students, and I'm with the statement, students are not all bad. I really like the idea that students and families and older people will all be sharing the same space. The idea that we should segregate people by age is problematic to me. Society used to be multi-generational, right? People used to live in multi-generational homes. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think it would be great for understanding each other if we lived together. So that's something that I really like about this as well, is that it encourages that kind of thing. Sorry, a couple of notes here. So the affordability, and I understand why it's hard for you to answer that question, and rents have skyrocketed. It really only does make sense that if you increase supply, you will make it more affordable. Unfortunately, we're in a place right now where there's just not enough supply of housing in the country in general, and that's unfortunately something that's probably going to keep on going for a while. So I'm really in favor of this. I think that if we don't go ahead with this development, if the town decides not to go ahead with this development, we aren't going to find a developer who's willing to work with us in the same way that the Royal Quest development through AIMCO has been willing to work with us. And I just look at all the revisions that they have done and how they have listened to us, and I'm pretty impressed by it. So.
Thank you. I really do like the idea of the mix of ages and groups and different persons. I actually do also find a lot of appeal to that. And I think percentages, especially in terms of college students, is appropriate to look at, right? So if we're talking, I think 10% of the units or of the numbers of people, I think that makes sense. If it was 80%, then I think that tends to be maybe overwhelming. Like when I lived in Alston, Brighton in college, it just became overwhelming with students and then bad decisions. But I think the way this is set up with the different uses and the different open spaces, I think there's actually a lot of appeal to that kind of mix. So I think that's a great point that was made. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Blois. I live on Berkeley Road, and I like the discussion that's going on about trying to get more data. I know there's been a discussion in the past about looking at all the different projects that are going on, some of which call for approval by the planning board and some which don't. For example, the building that's going on right now at the corner where Bertucci's is, there's going to be 2 more businesses opening up soon, a Starbucks and an urgent care walk-in center that are going to be far more popular than the businesses that were there before, and the Bertucci's is already popular. And
so that did actually go through planning board approval.
Oh, okay, my apologies, but so that's hasn't quite started yet. Right. And I guess just maybe taking a breath and looking and seeing how that's going to impact, because despite all the projections and all the best efforts, we know that, there's projections and then the reality sets in a year or so later. And so in collecting the data, I think you were mentioning that you're going to try to get some more data about affordability and rentals from, I'm calling it the Princeton Properties Project that went in. Is it possible, it may not be, but to also get, you had projections for water usage, how much more water usage, and how many more students were expected to maybe impact the school system. If it's with 98% capacity, is it possible to see, do we know how many students now do live there and are in the schools? Because, were they right on the money? Were they a little bit off? Because, North Andover isn't the only town that deals with this. Andover deals with it with all their projects. They were only expecting X number of students, and then 3-4 years later, oh wow, there's, families living where they didn't think there'd be families. And
So Princeton,
thank you.
so we can try to get some of that on Princeton, but as far as I know, there are very few 3-bedrooms there, right?
Yes, studio 1s and 2s.
Yeah, those
There
are all
aren't any
studios,
3
1s and
bedrooms.
2s. So it was a very low projected student count to start with. As far as I know of the recent developments, all have come under the projected numbers of students that they had anticipated. And we ask the developers to try to use the most conservative in terms of numbers so that, so that we don't usually come out over. One of the things that we've been doing, just to your point, is it is sometimes difficult to project, and it is difficult to project adding up different developments. But what we've been trying to do recently, so I'll take the Bertucci's one, we were very nervous about the Starbucks and queuing of cars in Starbucks. If anybody's been to Starbucks in the last year and a half, 2 years with the COVID pandemic and people working from home and drive-throughs, like the drive-through line has doubled and tripled what they used to project for. So we kind of pushed back on them on that till it came to a point where they, rearranged and we were comfortable with it. But we also set it so that 6 months or a year after occupancy, sometime after it's developed, they have to come back to us and give us a traffic study and show that it's not being overloaded. So we've been doing that with different projects in different ways, whether it's you have to come back to us with traffic results or lighting results. If lighting was a concern, you have to come back to us a year later and show that your lighting plan is actually what exists, things like that. So we've been, as much as we can, we've been trying to incorporate things like that for when people are making projections and saying how it's going to be, to try to hold them to that. So we have been trying to do some of that as we've permitted projects. So good points on those. Hello.
Hi, I'm Mary Lou Shulman. I live on Hillside Road. I've been following this. You've seen letters from me over time. And I have a couple of points and a couple of disagreements with you, in particular, Etan, about the 2/3 versus the 50% vote. Now, I don't know the details on this new Housing Act, but it's housing. And, I live adjacent to this property that's going to be redeveloped, and I couldn't push my back wall of my kitchen out 6 feet because there's some wetland back there. I'm fully in favor of fully making every use that's legal and allowed under zoning of your property. But this is a big departure. That is residential zoned property. It is surrounded by residential zoning. Princeton property is surrounded by airport, commercial, and business zoning. Avalon is in an industrial area and in the middle of the mill zone. Those are substantially different than what we're talking about here. And I did come at the beginning thinking it should only ever be only residential, and I've come around to believing in the mixed use. But I do believe that the scale and density, to Peter's point, are really serious problems. I don't commute anymore, so I'm completely sympathetic with the issues of the traffic, but those aren't my issues. My issues are scale and density when you are surrounded on every side except for one small bank building that is not residential zoning. And that's seriously problematic to me, and that is a zoning issue, and that should be a 2/3 vote for the town. in my opinion. And you dismissed it, and I disagree very strongly with you on that.
But it's not, so totally get where you're coming from, but that's, if you look at the legislation, that's why they enacted the housing choice law, is because high density, which this would definitely be, multifamily is controversial. It is something that a lot of people don't like, and it wasn't being built. So that's why they passed the law. So it's not a question of the intent of the project or the impact. It's literally whether or not it meets the statute. So that's whether or not this bylaw meets the statute of, is it by right zoning for high density, which qualifies
And
at 50 or 60.
I don't think people in this room this evening, unless it's my filter, I don't think people are objecting to putting a lot of housing in there. I think people are objecting to scale.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
So maybe scale is a better word than density, at least for me. And so that's my issue, is scale, the size of the buildings, the setbacks, et cetera. And one other point with regard to the college. The college owns 24 acres across Elm Street, and it's surrounded by non-residential buildings. It's surrounded by a couple of houses that now have Merrimack placards on the front of them, and office buildings, and then Hampshire Street going down to the Y. And that big piece of land back there that's woods belongs to the college. And students don't have to cross 24 hours a day across a 5-lane highway to get to campus if we encourage them to go there. And it avoids the issues of conflicting responsibility for enforcement issues as well. I'm not personally opposed. I live on the other side, so they're not going to be as close to me. Yeah, but I don't know how the Berkeley Road people feel. I'm not averse to the notion of mixing students. I am opposed to the notion of having to shoot around them on 114 and having somebody miss and not miss, but rather kill a student. I live on Hillside Road. There were a couple of deaths on that road that they're about to open when I first moved to town a little over 40 years ago, before they blocked off Hillside Road. And I don't want to see that happen again in front of Royal Crest. And I think it's a mistake to have the dorm. I'd much rather see that some other purpose from the campus that isn't 24/7 be across the way and in part of bring students there during the day for classes or whatever. So that's my thought on that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony, and I live in Berkeley Road. So I'm going to be part of those people that are going to be seeing that big clock and building. And you also mentioned that you're going to put a building that looks like a building in Lawrence, so we're bringing Lawrence into the town of North Andover, which kind of concerns me. I came here from Portugal back in 1978, and from an island, Azores, that never had snow just in time for blizzard of 78, so I was happy for that. So my concern is that living in Cambridge, we were really, really poor, and we struggled just to make ends meet and welfare. And my whole goal is to make a better life for myself and my children, to get out of the city where there was a lot of violence and crime, which I was part of, and bring them into a quieter town to have my children live in and be safe with. But now you're kind of taking that away from me, and I'm concerned that my children won't have that in North Andover. And we really have to consider that for people like myself that want to get out of that rat race of cities to a town that you're going to take away from.
Sir, can you restate your name, please?
Antonio
Your last name?
Camalo.
Thank you.
I appreciate the comment, Antonio. Going back to Mary Lou's comment, I think that I agree that the size and the scale are the issue, and then reasonable people can differ about how much is too much, right? So if we agree that some amount of residential housing is needed and a mixed use is good or preferable, and that there will be increased traffic, I mean, the question is going to become for everyone to consider, really at town meeting is this the right amount? Is it too much? Are the benefits outweigh the cost, or are the costs outweigh the benefits? And I think reasonable people can disagree on that, and I think those are really the worthwhile topics. And I think they're certainly debatable, and I think that this is a great process for that in town meeting as well. You know, the changing of it from, you know, from Cambridge to a city and town, I'm not sure I necessarily see that, but I think really the size and the scale and how we feel about that and the benefits to the town as a whole against the costs to the town as a whole and against the cost to the specific people in the neighborhood are the things that are really important to weigh, and that's what we're trying to do, and we can all have differing opinions and come down in different places on that.
So if I can
Yep.
make a comment, there has been a lot of discussion about the density, the scale, the difference between the current number of square foot built, the current number of units, the current number of people, the current number of cars to what is proposed. It's true the developer changed the design and reduced it, but it's a small reduction. It's a reduction, but given the total numbers, it's a small reduction. And this conversation that has been going on for a really long time, there's been a lot of comments that the scale, density, scope of this is much more like what we see in places close to the city, a Somerville, a Cambridge, than it is to suburban towns. And some of the language that I hear from the developer is trying to suggest that this is a design that's consistent with colonial New England. I can appreciate that they may be taking design inspiration. You know, I asked what part of colonial New England, and they said, well, you know, Dartmouth in Hanover, New Hampshire. Well, I've been to Dartmouth and I've seen it, and last time I was there, it didn't have 4-story buildings that were 70 feet high around the town common at Dartmouth College. But take inspiration, fine, but it still is a near city environment that is being created given the density. And I also have heard a lot of comments that we have a crisis of housing. That's why the governor passed this law in the legislature to increase the availability of housing, and that every town has to do their part. But if you look at what North Andover has done, just since 2013, we have added 6 major multifamily developments. They're all big. They range in size. A couple of them are over 50 units each, and a couple of them are almost 200 units each. Altogether, they add up to almost 1,000 additional multifamily units in town just since 2013. And that doesn't even take into account the multifamily units that occurred before 2013. So when I hear these concerns about the housing crisis, I agree. I think this town has really shown a consistent record of doing something about it. Not in a small way, but in a big, consistent way, but trying to still manage it as part of what North Andover is. And from my perspective, we've taken that right to the limit of North Andover as it is, adding 6 major developments since 2013 with nearly 1,000 units. We've really pushed the limit, but we've done it. Now we're being asked in one development to add more in one shot than we've added since 2013 in a density that is not North Andover. This is Somerville or Cambridge, which is fine. I like a lot of the well-done developments there. And you know, the design changes that I've seen, I think it's gone to something that is really much more attractive than you started with. I just don't see how it fits in North Andover on that parcel surrounded by residential properties. So I just, you know, you had your comments, and I wanted to have an opportunity to reflect mine as well.
It's a great comment. I mean, and again, we've had this discussion in the past too about, you know, can you have different parts of town that have different feels? You on 114 versus in the center versus in out country, and I'm not going to go through my opinions on those again, but I think we also have to remember with the increased units and developments have also had favorable, extremely strong financial growth, which has led to great bond ratings and things of those, which we struggle to get outside. We don't have a lot of commercial, we don't have a lot of light industrial, so these multi-family.
What's the end game? Do we, because of the financial benefits to the town?
No, I'm just
because of the bottom line.
No, just another.
It means that this town is going to be in the business of building residential developments. When do we say we've pushed the limit enough?
So we keep looking at, but my point is that that there are things that people want. If we want, we talk about, new school buildings, we talk about more spending per pupil and things like that, while looking at if we have increased students and things like that. If we want these added tax revenues, these are a significant way to add growth. It's not the reason to do it.
Well,
I'm not saying it's the reason.
Sometimes I wonder.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying that it's something that we have to consider as well as a factor. It's not just. It is a factor to consider in the entire spectrum. That's all.
Hi, I'm Paul Welch, 257 Chestnut Street, North Andover, and I just moved here a short while ago to get into a more private area, smaller town than where I was. And I'm just finding out about this, but I just wonder about, I'm not sure exactly where those dorm buildings are going, but if they're set back against where the backyard where I am, and I think it's Montessori Road is next to me. So if those are going to be 4-story dorm buildings, right, basically in my backyard, I feel like that's bringing the benefit of quality of life for the neighborhood around there in the back of this whole.
We can bring that up now.
And also, it's bringing the value of the properties down. I don't know if there's any rules or acceptance by neighbors when you're building 4-story buildings in a residential neighborhood like that.
It depends. It's what the zone. It's about what the zoning is, which is what we're discussing, is what the potential zoning would be.
But if all of a sudden, you're in a neighborhood and all of a sudden in the backyard, there's going to be a 4-story structure above the trees.
No, so the dorms are going to be, we can show you. So the dorms, you want to?
So are the dorms in the back left there?
No,
or?
no. Front left, 9, what looks like a blue 9.
Oh, okay, those are the dorms. So,
Yep.
So in the back left, are those townhomes?
Those are 3-story townhomes.
Oh,
which
those are the townhomes.
Those are about the same height as the buildings that are currently there.
Yeah, so I'm just finding out about
Yeah.
that. I didn't know, looking at that.
Nope, those
It's
yeah,
hard
those
to
are
really
the,
see. I
Yeah.
just figured I see a line of.
He's not worried.
No, those are
buildings.
connected townhomes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Why don't we, if there are any other questions, let's finish up, because then we just got to talk about the bylaw. Let me just go through that. Nope, not a question. Okay, just heading home. Going to catch the State of the Union. Starting soon. Things are great. Yes.
I thought she was asking a question, so I
That's okay.
kept seated. Laura Craig Coleman, I live on Fernwood Street, 58 Fernwood Street. And I've had some thoughts. So I think I spoke last time we were here about the fact that I just moved from Malden, for those of you who weren't here, and how I moved out here not to get to a quiet place, but because I couldn't afford the, 75, I mean, we all talked about like $750,000 being a lot. That gets you a teardown in Malden. So we moved out here, and I love this idea. I think this is exactly what I miss about Malden, but scaled down to a size that makes more sense for here. Even though it's bigger than what exists now, it is incorporated, it's enveloping in a way that when I lived in Andover growing up and I had friends in Royal Crest, this whole area was not before. It was very separate, even though it was residential. So I like having access to that. I think that it's a great boon for me as a new resident here, and to think about being a new resident in a place where a lot of people have probably had kids. Did anyone grow up or have kids that grew up here? Anyone? No? Okay, yeah, some of you raised kids here. So we're concerned about the schools, and I guess I wonder, if you have a cup that's overflowing, is it the last few drops that made it overflow? Or is it also the maybe gallon of water that was already in there? So we're
I mean,
trying to
that's-
make schools for everyone. I'm intending to start a family. I want to have schools that can incorporate them as well. We're all trying to grow. So this is a good way to direct that growth in a way that works for everybody, that doesn't exclude everybody who also wants the same things that all of you as town residents for the last however many years got from North Andover. So, for traffic, as far as I know, this traffic light scenario that's happening on 114 will be better than the pedestrian light that is there. We've all talked about how terrifying it is to have that pedestrian light go off and have people not notice it and almost hit a student. So right now, what they're proposing, and I don't know if this is part of the Mass DOT regulation or part of the Royal Crest development, but is a full stop traffic light.
It's part of Mass DOT.
Right, so.
And that's going to happen regardless of the project.
Exactly. So that pedestrian issue, I think, is less of an issue. But I do think that some of the suggestions have been to make the buildings over there academic instead of residential dormitories. And I think that would increase pedestrian overflow for walking back and forth to 114, because every student on campus would then have to go to the academic building to class and then back across to where the majority of parking is, rather than just the 800 or so students who would be living in the dormitories as they're proposed. So I don't think that's a beneficial proposal that was brought up earlier. So we've had some concerns about the taxing on the sewer system, and I don't know if there have been full plans done up for how much would be saved from remediating stormwater on site. A huge part of the water that goes through our sewer system is water runoff, because it all goes into the same storm drains that drain in the same sewers as our toilets and our sinks. So if there's stormwater that's being remediated there, instead of running off down into the street, down into the storm drains, that is much better than what exists today.
We did talk about that, and don't get this guy started because I'll talk for another 20 minutes. On
Yeah,
that. So
right.
We did talk about that, as well as the issue of if the sewer systems are improved, so places where there's leaking and things like that
Right.
are fixed, and that offers additional benefits. Although we did talk about one of the drawbacks is that we'd look at kind of the whole water system plans kind of individually as projects are proposed. So we don't have full, but we have the general sense. But we did go through that.
Right, yeah, I'm just pointing it out as a benefit that I think has been underrepresented in some of the comments. And I think, so my understanding, and I just wanted to clarify this, is that there's been a lot of concern over what the individual rental units would cost, but my understanding is the rental analysis was done by the total square footage of rental area that you're thinking of, right? So maybe that would be helpful for people to think about, is that, like, it's not that these numbers and projections were based on hidden figures of actual designed units with different, imagined residents. It's that in this total area, you can imagine having, per square foot, X amount of rental dollars. Is that correct? Okay. Because I think it seemed like people thought that there was some obfuscation happening, which I don't think was there. It's that the analysis is on the total building square footage. So that was my question. Thanks very much.
Okay. Leaving or talking? Leaving. Excellent. Jeff, leaving or talking?
I'm sorry? No, I'm talking. I just want to answer some of the other questions that came
Okay.
up, just so we close that loop.
Okay.
There was a question about policing.
Just can you introduce yourself
Oh,
again?
sorry.
Just-
Jeff Doggett, Executive Vice President, Merrimack College, and a resident of Johnson Street here in the town. There were a couple of questions earlier on that you had read, Mr. Chairman, from other residents about policing. So just as a reminder for the committee, Merrimack College officers are fully deputized. They have jurisdiction over areas that are either owned or leased by the institution. That is not a zero-sum game between Merrimack Police and the North Andover Police. We are in North Andover, or the parts of the campus that are in Andover. And so oftentimes, especially as it relates to Royal Crest, we do dual responsibility. The college pays for North Andover Police details to be specific in Royal Crest, especially on weekends. And then we have, we work with North Andover as it relates to what's going on in our units. There was another letter that mentioned that Merrimack doesn't keep statistics as it relates to its crime statistics off the campus. That's not true. Anything that happens in the Royal Crest units that we lease are part of our crime statistics. And we follow all the federal guidelines about crime statistics. We do want people to know what's going on in and around us, and so that's important to note. I covered the parking. Yes, Peter?
Where can people who are interested, where can they, because I know colleges and universities have to track those crime statistics. It's not optional.
Yes.
But for people who are interested in that, where do they go to find those crime statistics for Merrimack?
Yeah, it's the Merrimack College Police Department website. I think it's under the Clery Act.
Clery Act,
I believe. Yeah, right. The Clery Act is what, for those that don't know, the Clery Act is every institution is responsible for providing their crime statistics so that you can compare year to year. If there are particular pitches, highs or lows about particular things. I'm pretty sure it's on the Merrimack College Police Department website.
Gene, that would be great to include in the minutes if we can.
Yep. And I can get that, Gene, the exact link for that. The last thing I just want to say is there was a couple of comments that have come up about Merrimack and the housing at this location as opposed to on property it currently owns. Again, as the committee knows, but it just bears repeating. The college does have sufficient land to build for its own housing, right? As a matter of fact, that I've shown to this committee that we did actually have a plan that we were prepared to put forth, which would have developed roughly 700 or 800 beds on the corner of 114, right, right in front of the church. We were fully prepared to do that, and the college, as I've said, I think half jokingly and half seriously, blame, if there's anyone to blame, it's me, just took a step back and said, as the person responsible for master planning at the college, okay, so if we're going to do that, then there are two things that we really should be cognizant of. And the first thing is that we're going to be pulling a lot of students out of Royal Crest, and what that would do, and I think this committee knows, I've mentioned often, if this doesn't happen and we pull 150 units empty, that will certainly have a ramification on the town and schools and all the rest. That was our first thought. And the second thought is any good economic engine, like a college is or an institution is, should take the time to say, how do we leverage what we're about ready to do, and how do we generate that as an opportunity to do something bigger, right? In our case, it was, how do we approach and work with AIMCO, which I would have to say, right, despite what people may think one way or another about this project, has done an unbelievable job of coming forward with something that, whether we think it's too big or too small or traffic or whatnot, has said, how do we leverage something that's going to benefit this town, whether it's the 40B or the taxes or things like that. And again, while we support the project, I'm not here to convince people one way or another. But I just don't want to lose track of the fact, because sometimes people get confused and they'll make statements like Merrimack should just do it on their side of the street. Or Royal Crest, I think the comment from the neighbor was, Royal Crest is solving a Merrimack problem, right? And I just want to be clear, and I'll continue to be clear, hopefully right through town meeting, that from Merrimack's perspective, we saw this as simply an opportunity to be leveraged, to be able to do something bigger that we believed would be helpful to the town. And between AIMCO and Trinity, their proposal has done a lot of that. I, like the chairman, look forward to seeing how this plays itself out. We're going to be very supportive of it, but I don't want to lose track of the reality here. This was never a, how does Merrimack get in under the door across the street? This was much more of just saying, we have a need, how do we leverage that? And I think the challenge has been taken up, and I appreciate their work, and I continue to appreciate the work of the planning board to take this on for this.
So Jeff, if I could, Peter. I remember that you described in some detail to the board with some graphics as well.
Yep.
The Merrimack plan to build housing on that point of land in front of the church.
Correct.
But what about the question asking about the 24 acres of Merrimack-owned property on the other side of Elm, between Merrimack and the Y?
Yes.
What about that 24 acres?
I always consider that as part of just the equation of available land for development. So when I say we've got land, I include that in our thinking. Although we were planning on the corner, we could actually develop in that area well. It is not There's 24 acres. I think it's actually a little less than 24, but there's approximately 24 acres. There is some portion of it that's not 50%, but it's some meaningful percentage that is actually protected wetland itself.
Yep.
But it certainly could be a place for future development. Again, from our perspective, if it ended up after the end of this process that that's what we would need to do, then we would certainly take advantage of that. We don't lack the land. Again, from our perspective, this was simply before we do something completely insular, before we further wall ourselves off, we have a very unique opportunity, and we also have a situation that if we go and build this on our own, there is going to be a ramification about that at Royal Crest.
Yep.
And before we let any of that happen, we want to go through this process. I think we would all agree no one expected COVID, or this would take 5 years. This is where, from at least my first conversation. But I think from our perspective, I just always want to go back to that beginning.
But there are also added benefits to the college of this project, such as the hotel, right? The hotel, I think, to me, I think the hotel is a great benefit to the town, right? When people come to stay, sometimes people stay at my house, sometimes they have too much. I'm like, where do I tell them to stay? So they stay in Haverhill or Danvers. There's not really a great local place. So I think a hotel, and this type of hotel, 100 beds, not a giant hotel, is great. But that would have a significant benefit for college, for sporting events and graduations and visiting. So I get what you're saying of why focus here and try to help here rather than just develop on. But it does also have added benefits if this project goes forward for the college, for the town, for economics, for all of this together.
There is no question that from our perspective, it's a win-win.
Right.
Right. I would just
It's
say
not just win for the town; it's win.
There's no question. I would just say this though, and I think I've said this in the previous meeting. We are a Division I athletic institution, so a lot of our guests actually come in as a result of being teams that come and play us. They spend the night. Right. They do that now. They go to a hotel somewhere else. Right. That is revenue that doesn't come to this town. Right? Those are jobs that aren't in this town, right? So yes, you're exactly right. It is certainly better. There is no question from Merrimack's perspective to have the proposal that is across the street would be of enormous benefit to Merrimack. I would never suggest otherwise. But I also would suggest that the reason that Merrimack had come up with a concept, and again, I don't claim that we're the architect of any of this, right? But to come up with the original concept was, how do we as an economic anchor create more of a dynamic that is more beneficial to North Andover than it is in other of the surrounding areas, or we wall ourselves off from it. And in doing so, we create a dynamic that actually could make things worse, not better. And I wouldn't even have gone through that again, but as it had come up a couple of times in what you had read, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say it.
Let me give the website for the Cleary statistics, www.merrimack.edu. /about/office _services /police_department, and on the left side it says Gene Cleary Act Crime Statistics, and you can just click on the link. All right. So
thank you.
Good job, internet. All right. Okay. So Gene, we need to talk about the bylaw. Let's do that, and then we'll wrap this up for tonight.
Okay, so the bylaw is included in the packet. It's identified as 220301 draft article -MUOD article 19 _redline TFI 1.pdf. And I've provided hard copies for members here. And what I was hoping to do is just kind of briefly go through the red line edits, and those are based on previous discussions. You've had this before you for quite some time now, so likely have seen these red lines, some of which in respect to the dimensional requirements and parking really haven't been discussed in any detail yet, but the others have.
Okay, and what we need, and the purpose of this is we need to get a bylaw that, one, can go to the warrant, and two, that we can vote on as to our recommendation, but we need it in its kind of final-ish, because we'll continue the hearing open, but basically a final-ish form so that it can go to the warrant, as well as that we can vote on our recommendation, hopefully at the next meeting.
Right, and so the hope is we get through these red line edits, I turn it into the manager's office with the request for inclusion in the warrant. Tonight is not to make a recommendation in any manner.
Okay, so let's go through the red line edits. If anybody has comments or changes that they'd like to suggest, we'll do that, and then once we're through it, then we'll continue on.
So I'll just kind of call out the page number. So on page 5, I've revised the definition for the PAA rules and regulations, just to be a little bit more specific, so not materially different, just more specific. On page 6, filled in just, now that we have the master development plan, filled in kind of the, prepared by the dated plan that would be filed in the clerk's office. The sub-districts are now identified with acreage. On page 7, again, just referring to the overlay district map plan, identifying date prepared by. And then on page 9, we went through the uses in some detail, and there were some recommended revisions, so these are reflected here.
And those are blue and black line, not red line.
Right, yes.
Based on different times that they were edited?
Yes.
Okay.
And between myself and town council.
Okay.
So these reflect, we had the hotel in sub-district 3, it's actually in sub-district 2, so that's just switching it. And then we identified some maximum gross floor areas for certain uses. And if you remember correctly, we had called out that auto repair shops and gas stations and things like that were excluded from retail. We changed that to put them in as a prohibited use. On page, let's see that.
I think you go up to 28 at that point.
Yeah, I was looking, oh, so prohibited uses are on the bottom of page 12. And it's not in red line anymore, but we've updated that to exclude automobile sales shops, car washes, body shops, restaurants with drive-through facilities. Okay, and then 28, Peter?
I think.
At the bottom of 24.
On the 24, yeah.
Yeah, so the bottom, that's okay.
Yep.
So we've reviewed roadway dimensional guidelines, and there was a whole PowerPoint presentation on those. What we're proposing to do is include those in the rules and regulations rather than in zoning. And so again, it's now that we have them in final form, it's dropping in prepared by and dates. And they're in tonight's packet, so I have to update that date that has an X in it. All right, and then on 28 is references to parking requirements. And in your packet to date, there's been a matrix kind of showing some other mixed-use developments that we identified, but I'd say more importantly, the Osgood bylaw that the town had adopted back in, I think, '07 or '08, and it was very similar. It was a larger scale, but very similar concept. And so these are reflective, pretty similar to what was in our own Osgood.
And these are met by the plan as
Right,
drafted,
yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Gene, on the top of 29, where do we get .16 spaces per bed for dormitory housing? Where's that number come from?
There's a parking table that was included in the packet, and I think somebody referenced 137 spaces, so they probably looked that up.
So we did sort of reverse math. We have room for 135 spaces. We have this many beds, therefore that's the ratio.
That's what's on the master plan, yes. Yep,
Okay. We're not saying that we think that's sufficient. We're saying that's what it is.
correct. That's what's being proposed. And let me look at the Osgood, I don't think it was far off.
I mean, that seems problematic to me.
So it is, I just don't know if there, are there parking data I don't think we have any in any of our other regulations about dormitories.
Well,
I was going to ask a
I don't know.
Is the .16 spaces per bed, is that in relation to the 30% comment that was made before on commuting, or not commuting, but students that have cars?
We can do the math. It's not based on that. To Peter's
No.
point, I think it's based on, we have 137 projected spaces for the,
and I did not take that 30% comment as hard data. It was, geez,
Okay,
I
so
think,
it was a little thumb in the air then?
Yeah, I think.
but how much?
So I know we're trying to move this ahead, but we've gotten comments about this question, and it seems to me that that ratio is kind of the root of why it's happening, and is that appropriate?
Okay, so let's put a, can we put in a, can we leave that one as an X for now?
Yep.
So let's leave that one and see if we can get some
benchmark.
Some benchmark.
What
There's
is
got to be something for
appropriate?
dormitory housing, yeah.
Yeah, what's appropriate for college dormitory housing?
Yeah, and so remind me, this is 800, there's 800?
800 something.
Okay, so it's 128 spaces?
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's do the math here.
What we've been told is that 128 spaces were available. How many beds? That's how the 1.6.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But that's kind of coming from the wrong direction.
Yeah, but I guess going back to the comment that made before, the thumb in the air was 30%. And again, I know it's not hard data, but at 30% of 800, it's 240, right?
It's what?
240.
240.
Right.
Right now, it's at 128, right?
So we're off
So
by half.
we're off by half.
Yeah.
Even with the thumb in the air. So there,
Right.
it's somewhere probably in the middle of
But
that.
I would think
Or
the
even
30
more though, we're thinking about cars may just be for the more of the older students may have cars, right? So I think that we need data there and stuff, not guessing.
Yeah, and that's what we're asking for, see if
So
we
let's
can
get-
get, and for the data, Gene, if it's possible, not just college dorm car data, but college dorm upper class car data. Because that, to me, was hard data that, at least I took from Jeff to mean that that was a hard thing, that it will be upper class.
Yep.
So what is the ratio for in upper class dorm?
But I don't know if there's a
What-
significant difference because everyone's of driving age, right? So like, I mean, it wouldn't matter if it was upper class versus lower
I
class.
went to the Coast Guard Academy, couldn't have it as.
I lived in the city, I lived in the city, we didn't have cars.
So like, okay, I have a son in college, he has a vehicle there. He doesn't park by his dorm, he parks a half a mile down the road. So that's why I was asking Jeff, what other parking is available for those students where maybe, yeah, they have a parking spot, just not right outside their dorm. Is there still accommodation for them provided by Merrimack College? Not necessarily. Right,
Well,
that's the
right,
question.
I mean, the-
On-site versus remote, I mean, that may be a solution, but to have a requirement. I don't know, I'm just throwing it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, I lived in the city so when you did have a car, if you were lucky, you found a spot 6 blocks away, and you're like, all right, found a spot 6 blocks away, and then you walk. You know, most of us now are like, I need my car in my garage or in my driveway, or else this is, you know, a travesty. But I mean, I think we should find out, are there, because there's standards for everything else, you know, for restaurants and
Well, let's see if we
indoors.
can get it.
Can we get a standard for dormitory? Can we get how many students actually have cars and where do they park? How many students at Royal Crest have cars and where do they park? Do they all park at Royal Crest or do they park across? Like, let's get some information on that and leave that one as blank for now, okay?
So just to follow up on the existing zoning in NA, dormitories call for determined by parking study specific to subject institution, which I think is what you're asking for. And the Osgood did not propose dormitories, so there was no calculation.
So just a quick question, so on the dormitory housing, is this gonna be permit parking? Or is it gonna be flex?
I think we always anticipated it was going to be permit parking.
Okay. Okay, so then we need to have a pretty hard number for permit parking,
Yes,
right? Yep.
yes.
And it's somewhere remote. It's on the back side
Remember
of the dorm, so it's,
One of the driving forces here is we want to get people out of cars.
Oh, yeah,
So if you
yeah.
build more parking, you're going to have more people on the road parking. So we always intended for this to be a limited number of spaces, and we think that can be enforceable.
Well, right, but the issue is if there are 200 students that have cars, and then are they parking in the other places
Yeah.
throughout the development? And then if you want to go to the grocery store, now all the spots are blocked and stuff like that. So I think we just need a better sense of where people are actually parking and how many people would actually have cars.
Yep.
Let's get a sense of that. All right. All right.
so then on the part 7, on the bottom of page 30,
Yep.
again, just dropping in the dimensional requirements that are proposed in the existing development plan,
Yeah. And the units that were,
the associated units and
Yeah.
square footage space. And then for building heights, rather than specify max height per sub-district, I've dropped in the table that's been presented by building.
The table we looked at earlier with the actual numbers of the heights. Okay.
Yep. And I believe that's it.
Oh, and that's on page 32, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then at the end, I've dropped in the master plan itself. Which is specified to be, the date prepared by and to be filed in the clerk's office.
Okay.
And like I said, I mean, even leaving an X on the parking, it still can get to the warrant, and you still have opportunity
Right.
to revise
Yep.
that up until the time the warrant's being printed.
So let's not set that as hard, because I think we have questions on that. Okay, so upcoming meetings, March 14th, joint meeting with the select board?
Yep.
Where is that?
It will be held in the senior center and begin at 7:30, because the select board has a meeting scheduled at 6:30, and so they may finish before 7:30, but just to be safe, we'll put it on.
And then we will have our regular meeting on the 15th
Yes.
here at our regular scheduled bat time.
Yep.
Okay, that station. Okay, all right, so we will continue the public hearings until March 14th?
Yep, but there's one more amendment
Oh.
for the map amendment.
Okay, yeah.
And I just want to look quick to see if that one included any red lines. I don't think it does.
I don't think so.
So there are not any red line at this time. The one thing there, the vote required is still open, and I just need to talk to town council on that.
Okay. Well, the vote required, that's part of the warrant, but it's not actually part of the bylaw, right?
Correct. Yep. The planning board report and the warrant.
Right. Okay. Very good. Continued until March 14th. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughtful questions, comments, and
I'm sorry, I
participation.
think I did see a hand go up, though. Did you have an additional question?
I was thinking about the parking at Royal Crest.
Do you want to make comment, or?
I would like to, Mike.
Sorry, John, I
Okay,
probably
yeah,
should
no,
have,
it's fine.
that should have been you. She had her hand up.
My name's Roseanne Wise, 95 Hillside Road. I lived at Royal Crest for 5 years, and I've lived at Hillside Road for 21 years. We've had issues with water, with the developments that have been going on at the Royal Crest, so that's a question I do have for later. The question I have about parking is that we've noticed over probably the past 6 years that the parking isn't in the parking spaces. The parking is along the roads. All right, so if you're gonna have all of these kids, and not just kids, people in townhouses, apartments, what type of regulations are you gonna have that they're not gonna park along the roads? Because now you've got a problem with fire trucks and police departments getting down these roads.
So some of the roads in the plan have, some do have parallel parking along the streets, some don't.
Uh-huh.
Then there are designated surface lots, and there are lots within
Because it wasn't completely
buildings and stuff
clear
like
on
that.
what I downloaded from.
Yeah, no,
Because
it's fair
because when you print
question.
it off, it's about this big.
But I don't know if it says, no parking on certain roads, but I would assume, I mean, that is a good question, are
Right,
there certain
just
spots
because-
that are no?
Okay, because that is a concern. It's, I mean, the 114 traffic is horrible. Our Hillside Road is a feeder road. It's gonna get worse. So I don't know if that can be even addressed at some point. Hopefully with the DOT.
Yeah,
That will be
Hillside,
taken
yeah.
care of.
Yeah.
But as I said, we've driven westbound on 114, and that parking is really bad now. And I have no idea if something ever happened there, how would an emergency vehicle get through there?
So, and
I'm
we-
hoping.
Yeah, we do require usually what's called a swept path analysis, that if, there are cars parked and a
Okay.
kind of fire truck go through, and we have them actually go and do it and stuff like that. So
All right.
that's part of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Carolyn Kilcourse again, Hamilton Road. About 4 years ago, a friend of my husband's, who lives on Brookfield Road in Andover, closer to the college end. Told us a story about a student coming over and begging him if he could park in his yard because Merrimack was going to charge $800 the following year for him to have a car on campus because there wasn't enough parking. And I thought you should be aware of that and how many more students are trying to find places to park. And the way the campus has changed and expanded, they've opened up parking all along that 114, which used to be lovely grass. Rogers Center now stops having any performances for people like us in the area to go to. It's more student-driven instead of guests coming in. And if there's a hockey game and a Rogers Center thing, there's no place to park at all, anywhere on that campus. So in regard to the parking, I'm putting that little pitch in of what I know has happened in the past.
So, yeah, we'll continue to look at that. I think that's,
My question is, how many, when they find out that there are buildings over there closer to 114 for Merrimack with parking, they're going to end up going over there and taking up more spaces that really aren't Merrimack College dorms. So.
okay. Parking still on the agenda. Okay, all right, so that'll be continued until the 14th. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have one item still. 45 Katuitt Street, Ben Osgood, discussion regarding access to frontage of an undeveloped lot, map 23, lot 81. Anyone who wants to step out, feel free. Anyone who wants to talk about undeveloped lots on Katuitt Street, feel free to stay. Hopefully this will be. We won't keep you till midnight on your first one. We won't keep them till midnight on the first one. Some of those marijuana ones.
When residents get up to speak with the marijuana one, one in particular, the very first thing he said at the microphone was good morning. Because it was. Well, it wasn't a good morning, it was morning. That was bad.
That was tough.
That's funny.
Somebody out for a coffee run.
Yeah, exactly. Did you get pizza?
We were hurt.
Midday, you know?
All right.
Folks?
Oh, thank you. All right. Who wants to talk about this actual?
So Ben Osgood is remote. He's remote.
Oh.
Yes.
Imagine. Okay.
He's not on camera, but would you like me to tee it up to
Yeah.
kind of remind everybody of the last?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, so this is a discussion item regarding 45 Katuitt Street. An application for a notice of intent to construct a single-family home with a wetland crossing is currently before the Conservation Commission. As you may recall, Ben Osgood appeared before the Planning Board on November 16th to discuss access to the lot. An A&R plan was approved in 1984. However, currently, there is no constructed access to the frontage. There was an email submitted from a member of the Conservation Commission just questioning that this is a private roadway with no constructed access. Looked up some registry of deeds information and found that although a portion of Katuitt Street has been accepted, the part in the front of this lot has not. John Borghese was consulted with for the Conservation Commission, and he's the town engineer. He indicated that he'd be supportive of a 12-foot wide driveway as identified in the plan before conservation. He notes that maintenance of this accessway, including but not limited to pavement, aluminum box culvert, and wing walls, will be the responsibility of the homeowner. However, with regards to the question of lot frontage, he communicated to the Conservation Commission that it does not fall under the Department of Public Works jurisdiction and advised that input from the Planning Board and/or Zoning Board should be requested. The proposed house sits to the rear of the undeveloped lot, and the driveway sneaks across a wetland crossing to Katuitt Street. It appears that the driveway would cross Leiden to get to Katuitt. Both Leiden and Katuitt are shown on the A&R plan and a 1924 recorded plan. However, these portions are not accepted nor constructed. The discussion in November 16th meeting centered around whether a definitive subdivision filing was required to construct the access to the lot. The board requested more research as to the ownership, specifically crossing the paper street, how the A&R came to exist, current rights to cross and repass, etc. Ben offered to present the deed to demonstrate access rights and to have an attorney give a case law and a legal opinion for town council to review. Ben has submitted the deed referencing Plan 597 and stating, together with the fee insofar as the said grantor has the right so to convey the same of all the streets and ways shown on the plan. So that's highlighted on the screen.
Okay. Mr. Osgood, is there anything you want to tell us, or I guess what you're looking for us to do or say?
Yes, Ben Osgood, Ranger Engineering Group. So, if Gene, if you could bring up maybe so the board members can see my sketch that shows the lot development. It's kind of colored. I mean, I don't know if I can see it, but if you take a look at that plan, you can see we're proposing a single-family home with a driveway off of Katuitt Street, and basically it's like any other driveway off of any other street. It does come off of the curve. It does wind a little bit to avoid wetlands. There's a crossing, and there's a house being developed. It's on the rear of the lot. It's about a 200-foot long driveway, which would not be any greater than typically found on a 1-acre lot, where there, plenty of those types of driveways. There are driveways that are much, much longer. So we do provide an access off of an existing street. I would just like to point out, as I did before, the subdivision control regulations 255-2.5 regarding roadway improvement states adequate access from a public way with a street system within a subdivision does not connect with or have, in the opinion of the board, adequate access from a town, county, or state way. The board may require as a condition of approval a plan that such adequate access be provided by the applicant and or that the applicant make physical improvements to and within such a way of access from the boundary of the subdivision to the way. So you need to have access from a constructed way to the lot. I mean, that's essentially what that's saying. And, I believe...
It's saying that if you do a subdivision.
It says you need to have adequate access from a way.
Okay, so are you doing a subdivision?
No, the way exists there now. The way was there when the plan was done.
But then subdivision rules don't apply. Again, I'm not sure why this is before us, to be honest, because you're not asking us to do anything and there's no application before us. But either it's an A&R and it has either access frontage, which it doesn't have, or it's a subdivision and you need to go through the subdivision. So you're saying you don't want to go through a subdivision, but it doesn't meet an A&R. So
it had an A&R.
Okay, so then
the planning board approved this lot as an A&R in 1984.
So then what do we need? Then what's the issue?
Well, the Conservation Commission has asked you, as the planning board, to say yes, the lot exists, has adequate access from the way. They've questioned it. I don't question it, but I've argued with them about it. But they want the planning board to say yes, it's been approved as a Form A plan, and it has access from the right of way.
So we're not. I mean, unless there's an application before us, we're not going to say that. So if someone submitted an application for an A&R, we could say that. But if it already has an A&R, then your position is, whether I agree with it or not, is that that's already been said. So I don't like to punt, but I don't think that's our role, is to make it, because if someone disagrees with us, they can contest it, or you can build it. I mean, we don't have authority to say what we believe without an actual application before us. That's my opinion. I mean, people can have other opinions if people want to take a vote on it, but I just don't understand. I just don't know that we can say it has adequate access without an actual application for something before us. And the only applications that I can think of would be an A&R, which you don't think is necessary because there's already one that exists, and you don't want to do a subdivision. So I'm just, well, I don't know what motion I could make or vote we could take that would properly answer this question. If anyone has any ideas, I'm happy to hear them, or if you have an idea of what vote we could take, but I just don't know what's before us that we could vote on.
I mean, again, I'm just,
I think,
I might be speaking out of.
Oh, go ahead, no, go
Yeah,
ahead,
I was
Sean
just,
first.
I was gonna say, is I might be speaking out of school here, but, I mean, given that there's a plan that's already been approved, it's, I mean, to me, Ian, your point, it's, I don't know what we say aside from that there's an approved plan from 1984, right?
Yeah.
Conservation wants it, give them the approved
Plan, yeah.
but he can do that.
Correct, and they can disagree with it, and they can say, we don't think this actually, because you have an A&R, and they can say, we disagree, we don't think there is actual access, and then you can appeal their decision if they don't give you the notice of intent, or if they don't approve. But I don't think there's anything that we can add. I don't think we have the right to say, we agree that this A&R exists, either it does or it doesn't. And I don't think we have the right, respectfully to conservation, I'm glad they want our opinion, but I don't think we have the right to give it without an application in front of us. So, I think you can take the A&R to them, and then if they don't give you the relief that you think you deserve, then you can appeal that. But I don't see that we have the right to make a decision on anything. Is there a motion you would suggest we would take? I don't know.
all I would ask is that the planning board would state that was previously approved as an A&R, and that's the way it stands.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to that effect? Nobody wants, I wouldn't make that motion because either the A&R exists or it doesn't. I don't think that's for us to decide. And again, I know we talked about a legal opinion. If there's a legal opinion, then we can look at that. But again, I think we need an application before us to take a vote on something, and we don't have that application. So I respect the work that you're doing, but I think the fight's between you and conservation. So sorry to keep you on that, but that's where we're at.
All right.
And thank you very much.
I'll go to conservation and tell them there's an A&R and
go from there.
All right.
I'll tell Amy to be
Thank you
looking
very
out for it.
much.
All right, thank you. All right, can we get a motion to approve the minutes of February 15th? Motion made.
Seconded.
Ooh, all in favor? Kelly?
Yes.
Aye.
Peter, aye. Alyssa?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Can we get a motion
So moved.
to adjourn? Made.
Seconded.
All in favor? Kelly?
Yes.
Peter? Alyssa?
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you.